Good evening. This is the Finance Committee, April 27, 2016. First order of business, approval of the minutes of 4:13, not 3:13.
Right.
Moved by Jack,
Second.
by Chris. Any discussion? All in favor? Minutes of 4:14.
Move to accept.
Second.
All in favor? Thank
Is there
you.
a correction in those?
You do?
Is there a correction in?
It was corrected and published that way. All right, first item of business, we have little long schedule tonight. We're going to go over Article 27, which was up for reconsideration last meeting, and then we will have a presentation by the Personnel Board on Article 2 and 3, and then we'll have a presentation by the MWRTA on Article 23. And I think under new business, the only item left is the budget for 155 IT. Right, Chris?
Yeah.
And then we're done. At that point in time, I think we will have completed the town warrant, and we will have accepted all of the budgets as presented. And then on the May meeting, we can finalize the budget, and we'll be good to go. Guys, it was awesome. I mean, we're really way ahead of schedule. I love it. All right. Article 27. It's a $300,000 for the E-rate. Anybody?
We met with the schools on
Monday.
To discuss, rediscuss, the capital project for $300,000 for IT infrastructure in the schools. We met with them because we had a lot of questions that were unanswered. With them, we met with school committee members, superintendent Tremblay, assistant superintendent McIntyre, members of the Woodland Building Committee, Mr. Chakey and Mr. Bruce. And a lot of the questions that we had regarding the infrastructure was answered. We also addressed the lack of information going forward. And we had commitments from the school committee and the superintendent that going forward, we're gonna have a lot more communication between us. We're gonna go over the planning of all capital projects, both with infrastructure and with IT in the future, and have a lot more dialogue so that we don't have situations like this again. So they gave answers to this particular project to our satisfaction, I believe. If anybody had questions from it, I did not hear. So at this point, I think we're ready to move forward for reconsideration on this.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I'm gonna make a motion, Mr. Chairman, that we take Article 27, is it? Off the table and take it up for reconsideration.
Sorry. All in favor? Any other comments, Chris?
No.
Chris was at the meeting, Bob was at the meeting, and I was at the meeting from the Finance Committee perspective. Let me just add that what the infrastructure is going to look like in the future is going to be top-of-the-line Class A network, and the school will be brought up to that level. And now that we understand that from the town side, the town will start to implement that level of network going forward. So hopefully in 1, 2, 3 years, whenever the right time exists, we'll all be able to come together under the one IT director that we all wanted in the first place, and everybody will have all of their systems in place at that point in time.
You're looking for a motion, Mr. Chairman?
I am.
I would move favorable.
One other comment, if I may. And I think it was emphasized, and I think the message was received, graciously received. It's critical that we get that plan because of the capital nature and the capital impact on the budget. I mean, we're looking at initiatives that are in the millions of dollars, not the hundreds of dollars, the millions of dollars. And as the school committee will admit, they're only interested in their responsible area, the students and the schools, as they should. The town is more interested in what the town is doing, but the finance committee's got one capital budget, and we have to see how everything melds together, and we can't without the input. So that point was made, and I think it was received, and I think things are going to go along a lot smoother now than they have in the past. So I would second Aldo's motion for a favorable recommendation.
Any other discussion? All in favor? Thank you. All right, next up is Article 2.3, Personnel Board. His presentation, everybody got or had the opportunity to look at all of the information up on the drive. I only have one copy that I printed out, and ready to go. You can, you're gonna have to do that one, but, because it's all here.
Oh, I didn't put it all the way down, I didn't touch it.
All right. Personnel Board. Ready to go?
We're looking for Dennis.
Dennis is around somewhere. My name's Don Jacobs, I'm the consultant, I've been working with the Personnel Board, and Dennis has some slides, but
He's coming. Well, we
Where
were
is
told
it?
7:17.
probably we're up.
Oh, we're ahead of schedule.
Charlie, why don't you come on down?
I can start because I don't have any slides.
You want us to sit here, or?
Absolutely.
And these are stuck together. Gonna need another chair.
Put one over.
That costs extra. Okay. Ready?
Anytime you're ready.
Okay.
Dennis, these guys are tall, we'll let them reach that.
Good evening. My name is Charlie Abrahamson, and I'm chairman of the Personnel Board. And we're here to speak to you about the proposed new classification and compensation plan. This plan consists of about 25 salaried and 36 hourly rated positions. And then if we add the other classified positions in Article 2, the total comes to about 126 positions, which some of which involve multiple employees. So we're talking more about like 150 or so employees. Our board and the town meeting are the only representation that these people have. They don't have a union, and they don't have the ability to negotiate a contract. We've delayed this proposal from last year. As you remember, we came before your board and the selectmen, and it was agreed that we should try to obtain some additional information, which we have done. And then additionally, we've benefited from the fact that we've had the input from the liaison from the Board of Selectmen, Mr. Kincaid, and from your board and the liaison, Chuck Mikulsovich. And they were both very helpful. We ask that you can hold your questions and comments until the end of Don's presentation, and then we'll be glad to chime in. The compensation and classification plan addresses about 16 years of changes, changes in positions, changes in duties and responsibilities, and organizational changes. Traditionally, in the past, we've recommended only an annual cost of living increase. This plan responds to those years of changes, plus we're tried to address equity issues within the town, and we're adjusting pay rates to current market conditions. Again, this is not an economic study, it is a market equity study. During the process, we've been shooting basically at a moving target. Some positions that were elected have become appointed. A new department, the finance department, was created. Positions previously that reported to the Board of Selectmen now report to either the town administrator or to the finance director. Additional new positions have been created, such as a benefits coordinator, a highway supervisor, IT manager, among some of them. As you will see in the following presentation, the new plan can adapt easily to such changes in a fair, equitable, and consistent manner. It compensates employees based upon current market conditions, and it keeps the town competitive in attracting new qualified employees and also, and hopefully, in maintaining the staff that we have currently. So basically, that's in a nutshell. So now I'd like to turn our presentation over to our consultant, Donald Jacobs of DI Jacobs Consulting Company, and he's going to further explain the plan. Don has been working with us since the start of the study about 2 years ago. Don?
Thanks, Charlie. Believe it or not, I actually go back more than 2 years ago. I've really been working, as I think Mark knows, been working with the Personnel Board going back almost 10 years ago. And, you know, I know I've been doing this a long time. When, you know, you work with a city or a town X number of years ago, and then you're called back and work with them again. So tell you a little bit more about myself, and then we'll get specifically into the study. I am basically a sole proprietor. I'm in the municipal management consultant business. I spend basically about 90% of my time working with cities and towns, not just here in Massachusetts, but frankly around the country, although most of my work is here in New England, on the basic issue of how to manage compensation. And at this point, during the past 16 years, I've probably done almost 100, believe it or not, so-called classification compensation studies. And I think if I've learned anything in doing as many of these kinds of studies as I've done, make no mistake about it, the number one issue, if there's one common theme that every single municipality shares in common, including the town of Milford, is the need to improve communication with respect to how the town as an employer makes decisions with regard to paying positions and paying employees, and how that process, and that's the key word and what we want to share with you tonight, is the decision-making process, the guidelines, the criteria, how those kinds of decisions are made, and basically how they're communicated to anyone and everyone that has a vested interest in the issue of paying employees or paying positions. And make no mistake about it, communication is the most critical issue, not the dollars and cents. And I know you're, as by definition, as a finance committee, you have to be concerned about the dollars and cents, the money, but I would submit to you what is actually more important is to understand the process, agree to the process. In fact, there's no one, and I mean no one, whether you're a finance committee member, selectman, employee, personnel board, no matter who you might be with respect to your interest in compensation, everyone should be able to understand the process, and secondly, agree to the process. You can always agree to disagree about the results. You know, if I'm an employee, no matter what you tell me, I think I should be paid more money. That's not what this study is all about. This study is not about, by the way, and I think it's important to, you know, in the interest of disclosure, or let you know what this study is not about. It's not about an employee. It's not about his or her qualifications in any way, shape, or form. It's not about performance. Any issue related to how the town functions, how an employee functions, anything like that is not part of this study. This study is 100% about the position and how the positions are to be compensated, and secondly, how the employees in those positions should be compensated. Another way to say that is it's about how to spend the money. Once you as a town, the finance committee, what have you, determine what you can afford, the real fundamental issue is once you make that decision, like any other line item in your budget, the question really that should be asked at that point is how do you want to spend that money? This type of study is addressing that type of issue, okay? So with that said, let me begin by, and I believe you have a packet in front of you and the slides that you're going to see up on the screen, you should have in front of you, as well as quite a bit of supplemental information, probably more than what we might want to present to anybody at one time. But in leading up to tonight's meeting, for example, today we had several meetings with town employees. And what we're sharing with you this evening, we've now had an opportunity to share with employees. And as I think Charlie mentioned, about a week or so ago, we also had an opportunity to meet with the Board of Selectmen. And again, share with them what we're sharing with you. No different. So the process that we're explaining it tonight, and that's what I would encourage you to really focus on, not just the numbers. What I'm first asking you to do is understand the process. If you have any questions, concerns about the process, whether it relates to paying a position or paying an employee, That's really the first issue before you. Then look at the numbers. And we're going to explain to you how we get the numbers, but we're also going to explain, I'm going to begin by explaining to you how we first developed the plan, the structure. And the structure, as I'm sure you understand, if you look at Article 2 and/or if you look at your current compensation plan, the salaried positions and hourly positions, you see grade levels and you see ranges, right? And if you look at the Article 2, you also see steps between the minimum and the maximum for each range. That's the basic structure. And that's what we're recommending should be changed for the simple basic reason that your current plan is not consistent with two basic factors. One, it's not consistent with the organizational structure of the town. What that means with the levels of responsibility that positions have when you compare them to one another, and I'll get into specific details in a minute, but it's also not consistent with what you require employees to do. And I'll get into that in more detail in a moment. So the first slide, very simply, is showing you by saying there's a goal statement, that's the reason why you have a compensation plan. So a goal, by definition, is ongoing. It doesn't go away unless you don't have a compensation plan anymore. And as it says up here, I've underlined what I think of well, it isn't underlined, but I've tried to highlight what I think are the key aspects of why you have a compensation plan. First and foremost, as Charlie already indicated, I think it's important for you to understand, as well as everyone else, that this was not a cost of living study. The purpose of developing a compensation plan is not to pay employees based on cost of living. And that's one of the misunderstandings, frankly, that oftentimes people just don't understand, or it's not properly explained. Doesn't mean you can't use cost of living as a criteria to pay someone, but that's not the stated purpose of this study. As Charlie mentioned, it really is about paying employees so that you're competitive from the marketplace, and that's what the phrase market equity really basically means. And in doing so, enabling the town to pay positions and employees, and this is the key part of the process, and again, it's ongoing, is to pay employees and positions in a fair, the word fair means consistent. Another way to say consistent is we can explain it, we can put it in writing, and at the same time do so equitably. The word equitable means competitive. And that's a new concept that we're introducing. That we're suggesting the process to pay employees and positions should meet those two standards. No matter what aspect of what compensation we're talking about, it should be done fairly, which means consistently, and it should be done equitably, which means competitively. So how we do that, whatever aspect of the compensation plan we're talking about, always has to meet those two standards. And right now, your current compensation plan doesn't do that, okay? And, of course, we're talking about both internally within the town, as well as how the town compares to the marketplace. So when we use the term consistent, when we use the term competitive, we mean both internally as well as externally. So it isn't just about the marketplace. And as we'll get into in a few minutes, the marketplace, the external equity, is part of the study, but it's only one part of it. And unfortunately, when people hear the word compensation, they tend to think of it really more so about the market than they do about internally. And yet the reality is it's about both. So the three objectives you see up here are the three things that make up a compensation plan, right? And these have been accomplished, meaning what's been accomplished is we've now written job descriptions in an accurate manner. And accurate means two things. It means accurately describing where an employee spends the bulk, the most of his or her time, but it also means accurately describing what the minimum qualifications, or as the slide indicates, the knowledge, the ability, the skill that any employee needs to have in order to carry out any job duty, no matter what the job duty might be. And again, I apologize if you already understand this, but I think it's important to state it for the record. Again, as part of the process, in writing job descriptions, those are the standards that we write them in a sense to meet those standards, okay? And by the way, if you have questions about anything I'm saying, by all means, stop me or feel free to obviously ask any questions.
We're not allowed to do that. Charlie said we couldn't do that.
Right, I know he said wait.
No applause, save it for the end.
So, but I mean, if you're chomping at the bit, I don't want to, cause you any problems. So the second objective is based on writing the job descriptions, and by the way, this is in order, is to develop a classification plan. Well, the classification plan, as I think you already know, is really basically the grade levels. And the check and balance in doing that is to develop a hierarchy, a grade level structure that is consistent with your organizational structure, whether you talk about it within a department or whether you look at it as a town as a whole. The hierarchy that we're recommending, that grade level structure needs to be consistent with your organizational structure. So we're not developing a classification plan in a vacuum. And there's a tool that we have provided to the town, meaning specifically to the personnel board, to use to help them compare positions to one another. And based on using that tool, which is referred to as a position rating system, the personnel board has now developed a classification plan for salaried positions and a compensation plan for hourly positions. Now, there's a third group of positions that make up your compensation plan, which is what I would refer to as temporary positions. By definition, the word temporary means you pay an employee when you require them to work. As opposed, they're not part of the study. As opposed to a part-time position that is what I call a regular part-time position, which means they're regularly scheduled to work. Okay?
So you didn't look at any of the stipend positions?
We didn't look at any of the stipend positions that are paid a fixed amount of money, irregardless of how many hours they might work. We didn't look at a position that may be paid an hourly rate of pay, but they only work when you require them to work. And the basic characteristic is they don't work all year long. They don't work 52 weeks a year. And that's a third group, as I know the chairman is well aware of. In fact, at one point, we were going to talk about how those positions are paid, but that's a separate group. This study did not address those positions in any way, shape, or form. Okay? And the third objective, of course, is based on how we wrote job descriptions, and then based on the job descriptions, we then developed a classification plan, and then thirdly, last but not least, we then developed a compensation plan. So what does compensation plan mean? Well, as it indicates up here, it means that in developing the numbers consist of the minimum and maximum salary ranges for each grade level, but it also means the employee's salary at the same time. So it's both. And again, as it indicates in the slide, in developing the compensation plan, it's the same process for salaried positions as it is for hourly positions, and that both need to meet the standard. Again, this is where the equitable or competitiveness comes into play, but at the same time, it also needs to meet the standards of how positions are compared to one another, not based on dollars and cents, but based on what you require an employee to do, which gets back to the classification plan. So the first two objectives you see up there have absolutely nothing to do with dollars and cents. So for you or anyone else to understand the process relative to developing a compensation plan, you first and foremost need to understand how the first two objectives were completed. Then the compensation plan, not the other way around. Okay? So in your packet, or the next slide, will basically show you that what now the personnel board, and what I want to first talk to you about now is the classification plan, then the compensation plan. So the classification plan, as this slide indicates, for salaried positions, unlike the current plan, meaning your Article 2, what you call Article 2, your current plan consists of 8 grade levels, and I think you already know that. Well, the proposed plan consists of 5 grade levels. Now, for the salaried positions. Now, there's a supplement in your packet. If you look at your next section of your packet, and it's entitled The Characteristics, or the Classification Plan, Proposed Classification Plan Characteristic Chart. And if you look at that chart, and it looks like this, okay? Everybody should have one. And there's one for hourly positions, there's one for,
We have it.
no, it's not.
This one, if you don't want to use.
Does everybody have this?
No.
No?
It's on here.
Excuse me. It's called Document 1.
Right. We actually numbered it, believe it or not. So it's there you go.
Document 1 presentation.
Right. And again, if you don't have it right now, and again, I apologize, I know we're presenting a lot of information to you. So although it may appear to be very simple, so the first thing I think the Finance Committee needs to understand in developing a compensation plan, how did the Personnel Board come up with 5 grade levels as opposed to 8? Well, the simple answer to that question, all you need to do is look at the characteristic chart. And what this chart will show you, or explain to you, are the basic characteristics that define, that explain what we mean by grade level 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5. And the key characteristics are underlined. for each grade level. So you don't see numbers up there. What you see are characteristics that we call degree levels that basically explain in layman's terms the minimum qualifications required for each grade level. That was the first thing the Personnel Board had to do. Once they'd done that, once they were comfortable coming up with 5 grade levels for salaried positions and 3 grade levels for hourly positions, then they went back, looking at the job descriptions for each of the respective positions, and recommended assigning those positions to each one of those grade levels. And that's chart number 2. So if you look at attachment number 2, that's entitled Proposed Classification Plan for Salaried Positions, if you want to know the reason behind, the explanation, why the tax collector position right now is being recommended to be grade level 2, whereas the town planner position, if you had one, or the senior center director position, is recommended to be grade level 3, the simple explanation is just go back and look at the characteristic chart. And again, it's not about the employee, it's about the position. So very simply, all you have to do is look at the job description. And the job description is written to tell the employee or you or anyone else the reasons why this position or a position has been assigned to a grade level, for the simple reason that with that plan in place, then as you make changes to a position or you make changes to the organizational structure, then the classification plan or the classification process is designed to react to those proposed changes. And again, not based on dollars and cents. Okay? So the next attachment that you see, attachment number 3, is the same kind of characteristic chart, but this chart has at the top for hourly positions. So it explains to you what we mean by grade levels 1, 2, or 3. Very simple. Hopefully you understand it. But again, if you don't, if you have any questions as to what grade level 1, 2, or 3 means for hourly, or 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5 for salaried, obviously we're happy to answer any questions you might have. And again, employees were given these charts today. Okay, just as you now have them as well. So that basically is the classification part. And of course, attachment 4 is the same kind of grade level structure you saw back with salaried positions, except this time it shows you hourly positions. And it shows you how hourly positions are being recommended to be classified. Okay? And that really completes the classification process. Once that was done, this being the second objective, we then moved on to the third objective, which was based on how positions have been classified, we now want to develop the compensation plan. And again, word compensation plan means salary ranges and also recommending how to pay employees going forward. Okay? So the first thing we had to do is, I know the Finance Committee is well aware, when you met with the Personnel Board a year ago, I know this was a topic of discussion. And what the Personnel Board agreed to do was to go back and survey the marketplace again, which was one of the reasons why they brought me back into this study. And the positions you see, or excuse me, the communities that you see asterisks up here, Auburn, Dartmouth, and Drake, to be specific, were added to the market study from what had been done 2 years ago. So the 13 communities you see up here were the 13 communities that were surveyed. Okay? Now, there's an attachment that follows this particular slide.
Go ahead, Mark.
Sorry, never mind, go ahead.
All right, so if you want to know, well, what are the characteristics that describe, each of these 13 communities, if you look at attachment, I believe it's number 5 in your packet, it shows you the demographic profile of each one of these 13 communities. Okay, it looks just like that. And that's just to help understand the demographic profile of each of these 13 communities and how that demographic profile compares to the town of Milford. Okay? But, and this is an important point for the the Finance Committee to understand, we didn't just use demographic criteria in helping us to compare positions to the marketplace. We also used operational criteria. So let me give you an example. An operational criteria might be, and I always like to use the town clerk, for example, as just that, as an example. So the number of death certificates, birth certificates, the number of precincts that you might have for election, those are operational criteria. They're not demographic criteria. In other words, operational criteria really are meant to describe what the work is, or the services that are being provided in a particular department, and how that relates specifically to a position. Not demographically, not based on population. having nothing to do with per capita income or any other demographic criteria, but having everything to do with really what defines a particular department or what I do in my position here in the town of Milford. Okay?
Isn't there some correlation, though, between your operational criteria and population?
No, not necessarily.
None at all.
Well, how many birth certificates you have or how many death certificates, if you have a hospital in your community as opposed to not having a hospital, that's not based on population. That just happens to be whether or not there's a hospital there or not. Or how many road miles you have in a particular community isn't really driven by population per se. It's really based on the road mile structure. So if I have X number of road miles in a community, well, that's a reflection of the amount of work you need to do. Now, what the direct correlation is to the staff that's necessary to plow those roads, well, there is no direct correlation. So many employees per road mile or whatever. There isn't really any criteria, there isn't any formula per se that would relate operational criteria or operational characteristics to demographic characters. There are some.
Where is the operational criteria displayed on any of these charts?
It hasn't been. I haven't shown you that. In Kamami, well, we have them, we've done it.
Is it in here?
No, it's not in this particular packet, but I'm happy to provide them to you. We developed operational criteria, by the way, by going back and talking to the employees. We asked department heads particularly, as well as employees, to tell us what they think. So whether it was a police chief, a fire chief, a public works, highway superintendent, we asked them for operational criteria that would help define each of their respective departments. And again,
Oh, go ahead, Michael.
While you're on sheet 5, if you would scroll down to the bottom line, Milford to survey average.
Right.
As you go over this, I would like you to explain why we compare so differently from all of these towns. For example, per capita income, they're 25% higher than us, road miles 15% higher, EQV per capita 31%. Assessed value, they're almost 30% higher. These,
I was
I
gonna
don't
ask
see how
that.
this.
I was
my
gonna ask
question.
them the same thing.
We're,
I mean,
we're not even close.
It's almost setting the stage for a higher echelon of pay. So as you talk here, I'd like you to explain this
With
relationship.
all due respect, no, that's not correct. And we'll get to that in a minute, if you could just hold that question. And again, if we don't hold it, there's a lot to this plan, right? And we could spend a lot of time. This is only the first of what may be ultimately several questions, or several meetings, okay?
Yeah,
And again,
But you do agree that Milford is well below on average on all these things?
well, the numbers are the numbers. We didn't
And
know
they're
that.
well below
Those
the
three
rest of them.
communities that you saw are asterisks,
You added, great, but
those are all.
even with those, even
per
those included, we're significantly lower than the rest of the
Right,
community.
but we didn't do that intentionally. There was no intentional aspect of that whatsoever.
Well, shouldn't it have been
Here-
intentional to get us with towns of our?
No, well,
I
let me
mean, the
explain
exact
it. Well,
opposite.
again, we can get off on this tangent if you want, Mr. Chairman,
I
but
don't think it's a tangent.
we're gonna spend a lot of time just
Basic
talking
to
about
the
this
whole
one
damn
issue.
thing.
And I haven't even presented the whole plan to you yet.
And I agree. I think we should continue. Let's
Hold
listen to
that
the.
thought. It's
let's
a
listen to
critical
the plan.
issue. Believe
Let
me,
Don,
we
excuse
can
me.
answer it.
Don, excuse me. I think, and Jack just mentioned the same thing, there's a lot of data to encompass and understand right now.
Yeah, it's quite a bit.
And we have plenty of time between now and
Right.
town meeting to at least have one more shot at this at our next meeting in May, or we can call a special
Oh,
meeting
We'll meet with you as often as you want.
and just go over specifics, okay?
This will take a
It's a lot
while.
of information to absorb, and a lot of questions, obviously.
Question I want you to think about, in addition to the one you just raised, all right? And again, I can only suggest, right? I can't tell you what to do, so please don't misunderstand me, okay? I'm suggesting that the question you should also ask, which I think, I would submit to you is even more important than whether a particular community is or is not part of this mix, is how you use the market data, not just the data itself. That's the critical question, which I'll get to in a minute,
Well,
okay?
okay.
So with that said,
Obviously,
let me,
obviously you can use the data any way you want.
right. I hope you can begin to appreciate and understand why I told you the number one issue is communication. And this is a good example of it, okay? Legitimate question, no question about it. I can assure you we can answer it, which is where the communication comes into play.
All right.
Okay? Which is where process comes into play, not just the numbers. Don't get hung up on the numbers, because we'll be here all night,
We're
frankly.
the finance committee.
You know, you guys are numbers driven, what can I tell you?
Listen, when we
You
first,
are who you are.
Don, you have to understand, when we first started this, I gave everybody a slide rule, so the numbers are really important.
And I know I probably just stepped on a landmine, and, you know, what I've just said is,
You did,
which is completely contrary to who you are.
right.
Right. Well, and again, I understand and I recognize, and I very much respect that. So the proposed compensation plan, in other words, how we develop the salary range structure, the minimum and the maximum numbers, okay? Remember, our objective from the get-go was to do this consistently, just like the classification plan, and very simply be able to explain to you, as I'm trying to do tonight, where the numbers came from, how we got them, and what they mean. So they're not just numbers, right? And the proposed classification plan, and when we talk about steps, now we're talking about the employee, not obviously the position. So the recommended compensation plans for both salaried and hourly positions both contain 8 steps. And let me come back to the 8 steps in a few minutes. So just hold any questions or thoughts you have about that. So once again, there are attachments, there are supplements in your packet that basically explain, one, what we collected from those 13 communities. And if you look at those attachments, so for example, for salaried positions, there's 2 attachments. One is entitled Summary Chart, and the other one is entitled Detailed Chart, or what it actually says is proposed, for salaried positions compared to the market data.
Which document is
So
that?
attachment number 6 should say at the top of the chart,
That's fine.
Left-hand side.
Got it, I got it.
okay, it says
I just
summary
want to
at
know
the
what
top.
document it is.
Not that chart.
Maybe covered by the staple.
There you go.
I have it on here, I just want
See
to.
the word summary?
Yeah.
That summarizes what follows behind it are the details, what each community responded to.
Right.
Okay, so this is the summary chart. It says summary
Makes
at
it
the
easier
top.
if you hit the
John,
tic-tac-toe
one's
over
on the
there.
screen.
Is this?
Yeah, I'm sorry. If you go to the
So when
top
he
of
shows
the
you,
chart,
you can kind of at least get some visual.
you see the word summary.
Yep.
That summarizes the data we collected for each of the positions that were surveyed. In this case, as the chart indicates for salaried positions, well, there's an exact same kind of chart for hourly. Okay? And then what's behind the summary chart is a detailed chart. So if you want to know which community responded and how many for each position, these are the charts you need to look at. Okay? And that's basically attachment 6. Attachment 7, again, is the detailed charts for salaried positions. And then there's the same summary and detailed chart for hourly positions. All right, so if you go to the top of the chart, Dennis?
This is an hourly.
Oh, that's the salary.
2016.
Okay.
Maybe if you didn't.
6 and 7 look the same to me, but.
Here's the hourly.
No, that's salary. That's the detailed chart for the salary. So you see the 13 communities up at the top of the chart, right?
Yep.
And if you go to the top,
Same for him to see the bottom or.
huh? No, again, those are salaried.
Yep.
And again, you don't necessarily have to take the time, Dennis, to, but if you're looking at your packet, you'll see the same chart for hourly, all right?
The hourly.
Same format. Now, the only thing I also want to share with you, so that you understand the process a little bit better, is that when you look at the detailed charts, for example, what you're going to see for hourly versus salaried is we didn't necessarily survey all the positions, right? You might have expected us to do that, but the simple explanation behind that is you really don't have to. In other words, in surveying the marketplace, really what we've done, and what I recommend to the town to do going forward, is you do what I call a benchmark salary survey, which means you select enough positions for each of the different levels of responsibility, which means grade levels, so that when you survey the marketplace, you're collecting enough data from enough positions for each of the levels of responsibility within the town of Milford. So by doing it that way, you do not have to survey every single position. Okay? And so, just to, hopefully for you to understand that, if you look at the survey and say, well, wait a minute, why didn't you survey XYZ position versus another? We randomly selected them. We didn't do it, with the intention of leaving somebody out. So from one year to the next, in other words, what's very, very important is in terms of how you compare yourself to the marketplace, we very much want to establish a process that enables you going forward to do salary surveys in a consistent way and to make it as easy as possible, to try to take the pain, frankly, out of surveying the marketplace. Once again, so everyone understands how we do it. You can always change it, but at least everyone agrees and understands the process, whether it's surveying the marketplace or developing a classification plan. And I hope you can begin to appreciate, even though I'm not talking numbers to you per se, and I'm really trying to emphasize the process, which is why I'm saying to you that's so critically important. Okay? So once we had collected market data, remember the question I've asked you to think about is, well, what did we do with the data? Right? Not as much which community we surveyed, but once we collected it, well, was the data, was it viable? Was it creditable? Were we able to use it or not? Right? And in, the next attachment in your packet, which is attachment number 10, which lists 5 steps in writing, as Dennis has it up on the screen now. This is basically telling you the process that the Personnel Board has approved in order to develop salary ranges once we had collected the market data. And you've never seen anything like this before, because we've never had it, frankly. Which again is a good example. One of the reasons why it's taken as long for the Personnel Board to do what they've done is to be able to develop a process like this that they think is viable, that they think is creditable, that enables them to develop salary ranges in a consistent way. So for you to understand where the numbers come from, not the numbers themselves, but the meaning of the numbers, all you have to do is read this chart. And it should tell you, hopefully it's clear enough to be able to tell you the various steps, starting with step 1, which was to collect market data, and then what did we do with the market data? How did we use it? That's spelled out in those 5 steps. And again, I don't want to take the time to read through each of the 5 steps. So let me draw your attention to the next attachment, attachment number 11. So based on this process, and again, it's the same process for salaried positions as it is for hourly. It makes no difference, okay? We then develop salary ranges. So if you look at attachment number 11, and if you look at the top of the chart, if you go to the top, Dennis,
Yeah, none of the titles show up on the top of these charts, but that's
No.
okay.
We only know about document number.
Yeah.
you don't have the top? Oh, it didn't print out?
It didn't save, it didn't show up over, it didn't save over for some reason.
Oh, all right.
You
I
loaded
don't know
it
how
up.
that happened. Do you see the number 11 on it? Well,
Yeah,
it's the
that we have.
proposed salary range, the survey data chart
Right.
for salaried positions, and then there's, what follows that is the exact same kind of chart for hourly.
Probably too small.
Okay, does everybody have that?
It's this right here, right?
You see it up on the screen, but you should have it in your package.
It's number 11.
The salary.
All right? And again, let me just quickly explain to you the process, all right? But again, all you have to do is look at those 5 steps, and you should be able to understand the process. What this chart is showing you, let me draw your attention to what I think are the key aspects, what this chart is showing you. It starts with the, if you look at the middle of the chart, you see proposed range minimum, and then it says proposed range benchmark, and then proposed step 8, and then proposed range maximum. The first number that's critically important to understand, I'm sorry,
How do you get beyond step 8?
hold that thought.
Okay.
We're not quite there yet, right? Let me first tell you how we get the minimum and the maximum.
Sure.
Because then what follows is then how we get the steps, not the other way around, okay? So the first thing that's critically important for you to understand is how we've used the market data. So let me be let me try to explain to you very simply. As you can see from this chart, we didn't survey either the Community Development Director position or the Assistant Town Council position for the simple reason there's no one in those positions. And I wasn't told to survey those positions. So in developing the range for grade level 1, all I simply did was take the current salary range midpoint for each current grade level, or each current position, added the 2 together, and then divide it by 2. And that became the proposed benchmark. Now, again, if you go back and look at the 5 steps, the word benchmark is defined there. Benchmark means a market-driven number and no one has paid that number. So it's not intended to tell you or anyone else how much an employee should be paid. It's strictly intended to help you define the word competitive, and it's a floating number because it's driven by market data.
So it's an arithmetic mean.
Correct. And let's look at grade level 2, and I think maybe it's a little bit clearer for you to understand. The proposed benchmark number of $75,052 is very simply the average midpoint for the survey data we collected for the accountant and the treasurer position. We've ruled out we haven't used the minimum data, nor have we used the maximum data. And again, they're all average data, but we focus right on the midpoint. And we've simply added those two midpoint data, and we've divided by 2.
Can I ask you a quick question just to help me to be able to interpret the rest of the chart? So just for example, like the community development director, the current midpoint is 67,018.
Right.
You're proposing 62,873. So you're telling me that the community development director is currently overpaid
No,
by $5,000?
not at all. You're talking about now the employee.
Yeah.
And I'm not even there yet.
Position.
The purpose of the benchmark is to define competitive first for the position,
Yeah.
which means the salary range structure, then the employee.
But we don't, you said we don't have these, so you just took what we have currently on the books.
Because I didn't have any market
That's why
data
I'm
to use.
asking, because we don't have that, so we're not talking about a person.
That's
We're
right.
talking in our town,
A position.
Now,
a
that's
position.
what
So
we have
to me,
to
it
do.
is position and position, right there. We're not talking, that's why I specifically
We're
did
not talking about
community
employee.
development director.
That's right.
That's a position that we have on the books, is 67,018. We don't have a person there, that's a position. So
That's
that's why I
correct.
specifically picked that, because we're not talking about a person.
That's right.
And it's 67,018 and 62,873, because we're not talking about a person, because we don't have a community development director.
You're right.
You're saying technically, we would be overpaying them by $5,000?
What?
If we had somebody at that position.
That's what
If
I'm
you,
asking.
if you happen
If
to,
we did, though,
Yes.
that, it just helps me understand the rest of the chart.
And they may legitimately be.
And that's fine, it just helps me to understand the rest of it. I'm not,
but again, let me just ask you to think about one word you just used, and that's overpaying. We're not trying to say anybody. What I would recommend you say is that if you were paying a community development director $67,000 and the benchmark was $62,000, you'll be paying that employee very competitively. Whether it's overpaid or not,
Okay, good.
that's your guess as good as mine. But let me draw your attention to grade level 2, because you do have employees in those positions. Okay.
If I could ask a question, because I'm
Sure.
a little confused.
Yeah.
Very confusing.
Right now, grade level 1, the maximum I'm seeing is 73,928.
Right, that's in your current Article 2.
And you're saying the new maximum would be 80.
And
So it's a 10% increase.
not a percent increase, no, it's not. Let me tell you how we get the 80. I haven't explained it to you yet.
Okay.
I'm trying to take you step by step.
Okay, I'll wait. I'm just confused.
If you could just be patient with me for just a couple more minutes.
Sure.
So the first thing to understand about how we get the minimum and how we get the maximum numbers is to first understand how we get a benchmark number. So grade level 2, we rule out the lows and the highs of the data we collected. We focus on the survey average midpoint, which for grade level 2 was $74,027 for the town accountant. So if you want to know where do we get 74,027, just go back and look at the salary charts, the survey charts. It'll tell you exactly where that number comes from. So we're not making it up. 100% market driven. The second number you see up there, the average midpoint is 76,078 for the town treasurer position. And very simply, as I said before, we took those two midpoint numbers, which are nothing more than an average of the survey data we collected, add them together and divide by the number of positions we collected data for. In this case, it was divide by 2. If you do that, you get 75,052. So if you scroll down a little bit, Dennis, to grade level 3,
75,000 what? I see
75,052.
Where's that?
It's the benchmark number.
Yeah, just, yeah.
75,052, right across.
Just follow the column for
I see, okay,
benchmark,
Yep, all right.
okay?
You're going back and forth, that's why people are confused.
Yeah, you're just ping-ponging. Now
I'm going from
All right, I'm
the
with
average
you. Go ahead.
midpoint.
No, but you were going down over here, then you were going back to another,
Yeah, but
just take one guy right across.
That's what he just did that.
I just did that.
We did it with the town accountant or the town treasurer.
Keep going.
Go ahead, you're doing fine.
So grade level 3, okay? Everybody sees the benchmark number of 77,447?
Sir.
To calculate that, yes, I've got to jump over to the other column. I've got to go over to the survey average midpoint column, right where Dennis has the
Click on the
cursor.
cell, you can see the formula. You
Clicked on the cell. with the
Yeah,
bell.
you guys all have laptops, and if you
Yeah.
have it on your laptop, just click on the cell. You'll see the formula. Pardon me? It's not working?
You click.
Oh, he doesn't need a slide.
I can't, if your computer's not working, it's not my fault. But if you took the average, survey average midpoint, and as you can see, for grade level 3, we had a lot more data to work with. Just as if you look at grade level 4 and grade level 5.
Does that,
Right.
excuse me, Dawn, does that say that you only had 2 respondents when you divided it by 2?
No. If you want to know how many respondents we had, let's say for the town accountant, when you go back and look
I'm
at,
talking senior center director.
all right, so if you look at the senior center director,
74,005.
that's $74,005. If you just to take 1 second, let me just go back and I'll tell you exactly how many respondents.
I thought he said it was respondents, they took the number of
No.
respondents.
It is, and you just
Well,
divide.
it is, but we didn't have-
Just divide by the number
For
of
the senior
respondents.
center position,
Anywhere you shake it.
we had 13 responses. Just go back and look at the salary survey chart and it'll tell you.
Negatives.
Just look at the
But
summary
they're not gonna
chart,
ask for any money back.
okay?
You can't average negatives in and then not ask for money back.
So the number of responses
Only
vary
3%.
depending on the position.
I'm worried about, look
Right,
at
just
this.
that's who responded.
Throughout the lower.
How do you put it there?
That's what we did.
In some cases, some of the towns take
There's gotta be a way of getting to it.
on their salary.
Right, they may not have responded at all. But suffice it to say, when you look at the summary chart, we had enough responses that we were comfortable using the data. We had more than one response. Okay? So that's 77,447. Once we had that number, then we took a percentage of that number to give us the minimum. And in actuality, if you click on the cell, you can see the number. That 61,958
It's 80% of the.
is 80% of the benchmark number. Now, there's nothing magical about 80%. Don't be concerned about that. It just happened to be the way we did it, okay? The objective was to come up with a competitive range. What we happened to do, and to do so consistently. So it's not as important as to whether we used 80% of the benchmark or 75% or any other percent. That's not the most important part of it. What's important to know is how we actually did it, right? And you can always adjust that number. Remember, no one's paid that benchmark number. No one has automatically paid the minimum, nor has anybody paid the maximum. Okay? So they're strictly numbers to use as a guide to help you define the word competitive, both for the position, and we'll get to the employee in a few minutes.
But it does, with the fact that you did 80%, that is very important. When you're doing a minimum and max in the range, you can't say that's an arbitrary number, because what if I said,
Make it 50%.
yeah,
You
then,
could make it whatever you want to make it.
No, it's
then what makes the range
All right, let me get to the
Actual.
next step. Let me, hold that thought.
valid?
Wait a minute, I'm running out of memory here.
Wait a minute, when you're
holding too
referring
many
to a
thoughts.
number, give the column letter. It'll make it easier for everybody.
All right.
I think most of us are following it, but the point was just made that the benchmark is an arbitrary number based on the number of responses, and the minimum is based on an arbitrary percentage of that number.
Well, no, with all due respect, Mr. Chairman, that benchmark number is not arbitrary. It's
Based
far
on-
from it.
But no, it is, based on the number
No,
of
no, with all
responses
due
you got.
respect, it comes directly from the market data. It's not arbitrary.
Therefore, one of them, you just said you only had one response or two responses.
No, I didn't say that.
Okay.
With all due respect, I said we had more than one or two responses
Well, on this particular one, right, and you divide it by the number of responses.
to get the average
Right.
survey data, right? Not to get to 77,447. We added up all the survey average midpoint data, column F,
Right.
right? In order to get this column F number, we had to take the average of all the numbers in column J,
Right.
okay? That's not arbitrary. That's specific to the database.
No, I I didn't
Okay.
mean it that way. I meant that number's based on all the responses that you got.
Correct.
Okay.
You're absolutely right.
So you have to accept the market data sources
Right.
as valid.
That's right.
So to that point,
Right.
it's not arbitrary to get that benchmark number. It's a calculation, so absolutely. agree with you.
Well, if you only got one response, it's one response.
no,
Right.
no.
Yes.
Move on.
There are
Whether you
much
use the
bigger questions.
responses or not, whether
Okay.
it's 1 or 13,
I'm good.
Let's not get caught in the
that's a whole
minutia.
different issue.
Let's not get caught in the minutia.
Right.
Because there are some
I'm
questions here
trying not
that
to get bogged
are
down.
scaring the heck out of me, and I need to ask.
Yeah, we all do.
I understand.
All right, go ahead, move on, Don.
Maybe I'm covering too much detail, I probably am.
You are,
Yeah, we got,
All right, so column E was a percentage of the benchmark. Once we had the number in column E for each grade level, we multiplied that number. If you click on column H, you'll see the percentage number
160% of that one, right? So
for that one. So we multiplied $61,958 by 1.50% to give us,
60,
60%,
160%.
to give us $99,132, right? And then if you go to the next grade level,
Why 160?
Why is the maximum 160%?
all right, so, and here's the answer for how, to address your question a minute ago and to answer this question. Remember, the objective is to show you a range tonight that we think is competitive with the marketplace and to be able to explain how we did it, all right? So whether we used a 60% differential or a 50% differential, that's a subjective decision that the Personnel Board made. The point being that whatever percentage we used, we wanted to show you a minimum, maximum number that when you compare, and if you go over to the right-hand side of the chart, Dennis, okay, if you look at column L, when you look at columns L, M, and N, what those percentages are showing you is if you have a minimum of 61,958, column E, right? And you compare that to a survey data average minimum for that first position, which is the senior center director, column I, which is 63,635, the column E number is about 2.71% less than the average minimum data for that position. Whereas the next position down, which happens to be a town planner, if you have the same number for column E of 61,958, and instead of comparing it to row 15, you compare it to row I-16, which is 68,938, right? Maybe it would be better if I could point to it.
Yeah.
Hold on, let me go up there. Okay, so if you compare this number, right, to that number, right? Column, where am I? Where'd I go? I was in E, yeah. Column E, row 14, that number, which is 80% of the benchmark number. You multiply that number by 1.60% to get your maximum number. But now I want to test it. The nice thing about this system is there's 3 checks and balances to help you be comfortable with these numbers, which is, I'm trying to answer your question. So by using the percentages we used, we then went and tested it. And so we took that number, which is, again, 60% of the benchmark, or 80% of the benchmark, and compared it to the average minimum, and then we compared that, the midpoint number, which is basically the benchmark, to the survey average midpoint number, and that's what those percentages are showing you, just as we compared the average maximum, the proposed maximum, to the survey average maximum for each position. And that's what those percentages are showing you, okay? So it very simply allows the Personnel Board, you or anybody else, to understand, and then if you go to the bottom of the chart, Dennis, very bottom, you see the average totals? So that minus 11.70% is simply the average of all the proposed minimums compared to the survey average minimums for the whole plan. All right? Now that's a little bit of a misleading number, but it's certainly, what's most important, as you can see, is the proposed maximums, 91,043 and 101 and so on. If you took all these proposed maximums and compared it to, I'm sorry, I'm on the wrong column. If you take these proposed maximums and compared it to the survey average maximum data, these proposed maximums are roughly about 2.94% greater, average, okay?
But does it say that the benchmark is right on? It's 0?
That's correct.
So basically, is that saying that we're right where we need to be?
No, what it's saying is that these benchmarks numbers are
Oh, it's
competitive.
0 compared to your plan, okay.
That's right.
It would have to be 0 all the time.
That maximum,
Right.
I am totally confused.
Which man, this one here?
143,000.
You want to know how we got that number?
No, I want to know, does an employee ever possibly get to that number?
Yes, but we haven't explained how they could do it.
Well, then you're talking,
But it's not automatic. You're not going to get there by steps in any way, shape, or form. Just hold that thought till the next step.
sir, with all due respect, I've seen genetic codons explained unless, this is so complicated. You see it keep holding, but I'm looking at, you're telling me that we got a $113,000 maximum, but we're gonna let it go to 143.
For the next grade level.
That's the next grade level, and in
Yeah,
fact.
that's the
If you look at
we
your
don't have
chart,
anybody
these are different grade
doing that
levels.
grade level.
Has nothing to
They're
do
all
with the
contract
employee.
employees.
So each one of these, if you want to know how we got that number for each proposed maximum, you just have to go back and look at the minimum number for the proposed range and multiply it by 60%.
What I'm
how
worried
did you get
about
the
is
minimum
that
again?
somebody's gonna look.
Minimum we got as a
to get to
percentage
that
of the
number.
benchmark. We took 80% of the benchmark
I'm there.
to give us the minimum.
No, but with all due respect, if I'm in a grade level, and I don't care that it's 5 or 2 or 1, and I'm an employee and you tell me I can be making 10 or 15 grand more, I'm gonna wanna make that.
Right, and we want you to want to make that, but let's talk about the
Yeah,
employees.
but sir, with all due respect,
What?
if you get a 2% increase and everybody's getting a 6% raise, you're gonna get 0 because you're gonna get laid off.
I haven't even explained to you how we're going to pay the employee yet, and it's not by 2%
Oh,
at all.
we gotta hold that thought too?
No, let's get to it right now. You don't have to hold the thought at all.
I'm just, I'm totally confused.
So let's talk about the employee.
Here's the problem right now. We're all up to here with the data we don't understand. If we can, let's get to the final part of this on how this may or may not be implemented.
Right, so let's talk about the employee. I'm at the last step.
Let's talk about the employees.
So with this structure in place, minimum, benchmark, and maximum, then what the Personnel Board is recommending to establish are 8 steps within that range, starting from the minimum, and then equal dollar amount differences between steps, up to step 8. Now, you don't see that on this chart, all right? We haven't given you that chart. So the Personnel Board for each salary range established 8 steps,
We currently have 5.
and you currently have 5. And so whether it's 5 or 8 isn't really as important as knowing what the differential is between steps.
Well, it is if I'm a top pay now.
Well,
And that's the chart that's missing.
That's the chance.
Actually, the 8 steps.
We have that
are
chart.
written in our warrant.
We're not trying to hide it from
The
you,
8
but
steps are listed in the warrant.
No, that's not what I'm talking about.
Okay.
The chart that we should be able to look at is current employee salary versus what your proposed 8-step plan is, and who fits in where and how they got there. All
Right.
right?
And what I-
That's the issue. I know you have that one.
right. And remember what I suggested to you was first understand the process, secondly, understand how we got the range numbers, and then thirdly, how we're gonna pay the employees.
Well, but sir, there's a step before it. What problem are we trying to fix? I'm totally confused. Mark, just bear with me 30 seconds.
I want him to
Salary-
finish, and then we can ask that
Okay,
question.
because salary changes to me are to attract and maintain employees.
Exactly right.
Do we have a problem before we start handing out big raises that may bite us in the backside?
Can we let the gentleman, please finish, Don, so we can move on to some questions? We have another long presentation after you. And I think that you guys are gonna have to come back again
We fully understand
next
that.
meeting and talk about this some more, and maybe we'll give you some more specific kind of questions.
Let me wrap it up in a nutshell, okay? If you look at Article 2, you'll see the 8 steps. Okay? And that's really basically, so what we did, once we established the 8 steps, is we then looked at all the current salaries of the employees in each respective position, and the Personnel Board then is bringing the employee up to the appropriate step, assuming that their current salary is within those 8 steps. There are some employees that you'll see when we show you that chart whose current salary is above the 8th step, okay? So the 8th step is not the top of the salary range. You do not automatically get to the top under this proposed plan. So there's 8 annual increase steps that are being proposed. The difference between each step is an equal dollar amount, not a percentage. And the reason for that being that the lower the salary, the lower the step, the dollar equivalent increase is a greater percentage of base salary. So we think it's more equitable, as opposed to having percentages between the steps. So once we assigned an employee, let's assume that their current salary is somewhere between step 1 and step 8. Then the process is, next year you would go from step 5 to 6, or 4 to 5, or wherever you happen to be. And again, we can show you a chart that plots out all the employees and what step they would start at under this new plan. For those employees, and this is the last comment, that are above step 8 today, their current salary, and you'll see it on the chart, and we've shown the employees those individuals that their current salary happens to be above step 8, those individuals, what's recommended, would receive a cost of living increase, which today is about 1%, a little bit less than 1%. But the Personnel Board has rounded up to 1%.
Sure.
Cost of living is 0?
According to the federal government, Cyril. I didn't
Well-
I didn't get a raise in my social security.
Right.
I'm only telling you what the Personnel Board has done. I'm not
Okay.
here to defend it.
No more cost of living increases?
We didn't say.
All right, so,
Mark, may I ask just one simple question?
so depending upon what step you start at, then what's been proposed or what's recommended is that there be an annual step increase, and that's all. There would be no cost of living increase, there'd be no other adjustment to a salary other than the cost of, or the amount between one step and another. And if you reach the top step, you don't automatically max out the way you do today. And in fact, the chart that we'll show you when we plot out all the employees, that benchmark number that I showed you earlier is basically equivalent to step 5. And step 5, meaning the benchmark number, which is not the exact same number as step 5. Remember I said no one is paid that benchmark number. It's strictly a guide to define competitive, is equivalent to or close to step 5, so that when you reach step 5, you're being paid competitively. You don't have to be at the top step in order for the town to say to an employee that we're paying you competitively. Because we now have defined the word competitive based on developing the benchmark, okay, for each salary range, and that's the last thing.
John, I have a question, it's a very simple question.
Sure.
If the town were to adopt this procedure for salary determinations, would this be the last time we would need to make any kind of adjustments, that the process would take care of the adjustments?
Yes, but let me be very specific. The answer is yes.
I'm gonna be very specific when you finish.
Okay. And the way that's maintained is periodically the town would collect new market data, right? And the net effect of collecting new market data would be to adjust that survey average midpoint,
Right.
which in turn adjusts the benchmark.
Understood.
And that's how it all ties together.
What concerns me is that, now, I've been involved with this, the process of determining an individual position's value. This is probably the 4th iteration of a salary development plan since the early 1980s. And every one of the ones that were adopted was the last time we were ever gonna need to do this, because this was gonna happen, this is gonna happen, and this is gonna
Well, that's a
happen.
great point.
Well, I mean, we went through the Olney report, we went through whatever, and when
I
Olney
understand
was
that.
here, we were never, ever, ever gonna have to worry about the salary, because the plan would take care of it. So you're telling me that if this were to,
respect, that's not accurate,
on the Olney report?
on any report.
No. Excuse me. I
Gentlemen.
don't want to argue with you, but I was on the Board of Selectmen that accepted the Olney report with the proviso that we would not be doing exactly what we're doing again. That's my only concern. If this works.
That's a legitimate
If
concern.
it
I agree with
works,
you
I'm for
1,000%.
it. If it works, I'm for it.
Right, and
But I
here's the
don't know
test.
that it works.
But here's the test. Unlike other studies that have been done for the town of Milford, this study, every step along the way, every part of the process, whether it's developing a classification plan or developing salary ranges or paying employees, everything has now been put in writing, right? That 5-step process that you saw in one of your attachments is an example of what I'm talking about. So everything that I've verbally tried to explain to you tonight, we're also giving it to you and all the employees in writing, so that you can therefore understand it. Doesn't mean you can't change it, but if you follow the process that I've described to you this evening, you will be able to maintain this plan, and as I think Charlie indicated, or Dennis, you'll be able to adjust to changes that when you decide to take an elected position and make it appointed, or you create a new position, or you change the responsibilities of an employee, and therefore have to decide whether or not that change should result in an employee being paid more money or not, and if so, how much. This process will address all of those kinds of issues. Because there's a series of checks and balances, and I mentioned, for example, the organizational structure of the town. Well, that's one of the checks and balances If you look at a department, I don't care what, any department you want to look at, and look at the hierarchy of responsibility within that department, the classification plan needs to match it exactly. Exactly. From the highest level of responsible position to the lowest.
Okay,
Just one quick thing, May?
ahead.
That's what I need to know, the assurance, I'm not looking
understand.
at the numbers.
I know.
I'm looking at the process.
I think that's a
Now, if
great
the
point.
process is going to work next year and 5 years down the road,
Absolutely.
it's worthy of consideration. If we're gonna be back reinventing the wheel for the fifth time, then it really isn't.
No, that should never happen. And again, I say that for good reason.
With all due respect,
No, I understand.
I've heard that before.
And again, frankly, and I always tell this to everybody, most of the studies that I do, 99.9% of them are because the plan wasn't maintained, for that very simple reason. That should never happen in the town of Milford.
Got some more questions.
Have you explained this to Article 2 employees, and do they find this plan preferable to our current plan?
I can't speak for employees. I mean, I'd
We
be,
have
Well, I'm just-
explained it-
that survey
we
is
have
important,
explained it
too,
to the
'cause
employees,
we met with
and there were
employees.
employees who were not happy with it.
there were some
And there were
employees.
employees that were happy.
Well, obviously, the ones that were
There
happy
were the
got a big
pluses and the
raise.
minuses, you're
The
exactly
ones that
right.
weren't didn't get a raise.
So my concern is.
Clear to me.
If we're confused, they're gonna be confused, and if they're confused, they're not gonna be happy, and we're gonna do the opposite of what we're trying to do is
I'm not sure
retain.
they were confused. There was a lot of data for them.
They should run
to
for
absorb,
FinCom.
certainly.
I think, in my opinion, and we need to wrap this up for tonight, I think, because we're gonna have a lot more questions, and I'd like to see you guys back here on the 11th of May for our next meeting. And we could put out a report saying that it's to be determined what we're gonna vote on this article right now. This is very complicated. Most of us here, I would say almost all of us here, have come from industry. And in industry, the world is not as complicated. There's a grade, there's a range, top, bottom, and you get merit increases along the way to get to the top of the range. If you're in the third quartile, the objective is to get promoted to the next level, so you go back to the bottom. This is incredible to me how complicated it is, and I'm just sitting here trying to absorb this.
And I understand this represents a significant change, which is why this is difficult to do. But again, remember, we're talking about the public sector.
But I don't know why we need steps to begin with.
You don't
That's
have
my
to
whole
have
point.
steps. That's just what the personnel boards decide. You don't have to have steps.
In order to eliminate steps, you need a merit review.
Yeah, and that's
You don't have
perfectly
a merit-
acceptable
you don't
to this
have a merit
board.
There is no
review
merit
process.
system in place today.
Well, why don't we get one and then implement that?
Happy to
I
help.
this.
I think 3 years down the road, you may have one in place, but right now you don't.
Aldo, listen up now, 3 years from now, we're gonna revise it. 2 points if I may. One,
Sure.
it may be helpful to these folks if we put together a list of questions.
We're gonna.
So they can answer them in the next week or two.
Yep.
And 2, Don, can you get me this so that I can print these spreadsheets out on an 8.5 by 14?
8.5 by 14?
Well, legal size, yeah.
I'll give it to you, 8.5 by 11.
Well, just give it to me in a spreadsheet and I'll get it changed.
how do you stretch it?
Well, you can stretch it.
no idea.
Yes, you do.
The answer is, yeah, everything you've seen tonight, we have
Right.
It's in
electronically.
PowerPoint, or you've got those
No,
spreadsheets?
no, all the attachments.
All the spreadsheets are
No, in Excel.
Should already have them.
Some
We
of them
can-
are Word documents.
Well, it's
I have
on
them,
it's
but
on our
some of the
website.
spreadsheets are so long and complicated when you put it on one piece of paper, you can barely read it without a magnifying glass, and some of us are old.
Problem at all. What are you talking about?
And if it would help you,
Except
Mr.
for him.
Chairman, if individual members of the committee would like an electronic file of all
There
the
is an electronic
attachments,
file, we have it up on the cloud under our thing, I put it up, it's all there.
and that's fine. I'm just offering, if you want it
I appreciate it.
directly, I'm more than happy to give it to you.
All right, I think the next order of business would be to ask these gentlemen to come back May 11th, first on the agenda. We will forward some questions to you over the next 2 weeks, and be prepared to answer those on the 11th, and then we can take a vote. We haven't even heard from Chuck, who's the subcommittee chairman, on what his thought process is. So at this point in time, because of our long agenda, I would, I'd like to get a motion to table this. Anybody hear me? I'd like to have a motion to
Yes.
table this.
Yeah, if I could just, how are you gonna forward, do you want my email address, or do you want?
I'll
Dennis?
send it to Charlie.
Okay.
Motion to table.
All in favor? Thank you.
My printer doesn't work at home, so
I'll move out of the way.
All right.
All right, Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
has everybody got on their laptop, their tablets, all the files and folders? Everybody's
Excel
okay?
sheet of
Well, I think there's still some issues, but
No, everybody's up. Everybody's up.
You hit the refresh button and everything comes up.
No cost of living increases, huh?
Hit the refresh.
I logged them all in as me, and they can say that.
Where's the refresh? You did, if you're at the top. If you're at the top, there's no cost of living increase.
all right, guys.
The refresh, they all come up.
Where is it? No, you're at the top, you never get.
Top, the little circle guy, up on the very
I
top
still don't know how you
left-hand
get to the
corner.
max.
All right.
Bet you Jimmy Hoffa couldn't figure that one out.
Yeah, so to get to the max, you have to be above step 8 already.
All right, let's not discuss, Albert, let's not discuss this anymore until next meeting. No, I want to move on to the MWRTA.
Folder that doesn't have anything. Yeah, and refresh every folder that you want to look at.
Pissed off because they've been working on this for 3 years and expected they're gonna.
Hit the restroom, this is gonna be long too.
Yeah.
Do you think that she's an alternate on the personnel?
Okay, so now you need to refresh that.
You hit mine. I am, that's what I was gonna say, but I shot my bid.
Every bargain to refresh.
All right, can we,
Position that I know.
get back to order, please? All right, next item on the agenda is MWRTA discussion.
Mike, I got it.
A month ago, or whatever time we had the last meeting, the MWRTA was here, made a presentation, there were a bunch of questions. Since then, there's been some data that has been forwarded. Again, that's up on the cloud. Everybody should have it. Of course, that's probably not true. And we need to go from there. We're going to the MWRTA.
Take the bus to the meeting tonight.
I come. All right. On the cloud, there's a whole folder of MWRTA information. Again, a lot of this we've seen, but there's some new items here. One of the items that,
Actually, is a good summary.
yeah, there's a good summary on there that Harold put together. And I put that up. It's Milford bus route. Gentlemen, come on.
That's one of the items.
I thought they were like Milford residents and
All right, why don't we start?
Sure, why don't
You're the proponents.
let the individuals introduce themselves for the benefit of people who might not know. I think everybody remembers Carl, and Carl, I'm sorry.
Oh, Carl D'Abagella. I'm with the MWRTA. I'm the Community Development Coordinator.
I think you know Harold Rhodes. Harold Rhodes has been our liaison to the MWRTA for how long now? 2 years? Year and a half. Year and a half, okay.
You're welcome.
And I think I know everyone here.
All right, we had a bunch of questions last time, and I think maybe the place to start is what our objectives are on this committee. Our objective is to review the pending article as written or as developed. Questions are available. We have issues or questions on the finances, and that's all we should be talking about. Okay, can we afford this? Is it cost effective? And where do we go from here? And I think part of that, obviously, is how we're gonna manage this in the future as well. So we did have questions on the budget that was presented last time, and I'd like one of you gentlemen to elaborate on where those numbers came from and how we got there. I think that's a good start. That'll open up anyway.
I think you've been provided the basis for the MWRTA's calculations, assumptions. That should be in your packet. That was one of the asks. I'm not sure which member asked for it, but, that's been provided in the packet. I think you,
I'm sorry, Bill, I don't know which one you're talking about.
yes.
Which one?
The projected costs, is that what you're referring to?
That's the budget that was presented.
Right.
Yeah, that's the one from, it's a breakdown of the MWRTA cost.
Right.
That was a question from the last one that I think had been asked.
We had that, it's very detailed, yeah.
Okay, with the, exhaustive detail, and I think one of the pointers was the administrative burden that was placed on it. So we now have an understanding of that. I think Harold has also provided frequently asked questions.
Yes.
That's been provided, so as we socialize and go out and communicate the message and get back questions, we hear sometimes repeated questions. It's an indicator to us that maybe we can polish our communication and make these forums and efforts like this more detailed, so we know what we're doing and what we're doing well and what we need to do better at. So the frequently asked questions is an attempt to target some of the repeat questions or where people are very focused on getting more information. So hopefully you have that list as well. I'm trying to think. Why don't we take it from the standpoint of your committee and what might not be there that they may need more detail on or understanding, or what we can help with beyond what we've already provided in the volumes of data.
And can I just make?
Yeah, please.
Just a few,
Please.
Mark, may I make a few comments? So the frequently asked questions was an attempt after, did everybody get a copy of this?
It's up here, but I know I put it up here. I don't know if I can find it. Oh, I got
I
it.
brought extra copies of.
Thank you.
I have it, thank you. I
Is it over here? Thank you.
just had it, what the hell did I do with it?
I have
Okay,
that.
I'll take one, sir.
I got it somewhere.
Okay, it's, starts with route, service, bus fares, net costs.
So the reason why, Mark, I put this together was one of the takeaways from our last meeting is I recognized that there was possibly an uneven understanding of the various things that we were talking about, and I wanted to be sure that we all had a common understanding of the, thank you very much, Aldo.
No, one of the sheets.
I'll get to
Oh,
Thank you.
thank you,
I never have any trouble hearing you.
thank you.
Glad we have the technology.
So as I was saying, that we all have a common basis on which to understand what we're talking about. The most important thing, I hope everyone in this room, understands right from the beginning, is what we're talking about is a pilot program, all right? This is not a commitment for multi-years, and it's been constructed to not just be a pilot program, but a cancelable pilot program. So if we get 3 months into this and we haven't seen a rider, or if we've gone 6 months and only had 100 riders, well, okay, that's the way it is, and that's the way it is. So it's a low-risk decision on whether this is, a valuable, useful program for our community. And, I just want to be sure that everybody.
So let me just comment on that, if you don't mind. Because you said something that's very interesting. We're gonna put up $250,000, theoretically, at town meeting. And 2 months into the program, nobody's riding the bus. Do we get,
No, we only pay 2 months.
we get a percentage back?
Yeah, we can pay, I'm sorry for interrupting you, Mark. We can pay, as the MWRT told us, annually, semi-annually, quarterly, monthly.
It's not writing the
And
check, Harold.
We only owe them for the amount of time they've served us.
But it's tying up the money for that amount of time.
It is, yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
All right, that's
effectively,
fine.
effectively.
No, it is.
Yeah.
Effectively, yeah, that's right. yeah.
If for some reason, and this isn't something I could imagine in the short term or immediate future, but If for some reason a program is not working out and we agree to part ways, then that money would roll over to free cash the following year, the money unspent from the program.
Some question on that point. If you go 3 months into the program and we have the 75,000 grant and we halt the program after 3 months, does all of the grant go away, or we get a proration of that, or are we able to hold up, pay all the bills with that grant money? And you may not have an answer to that, but since we're talking about proration here, that question's gonna come up.
We can explore that with Shannon.
All right.
My understanding is if there's a good faith effort by this community to get this program going, the hospital through its programs, and I know there's a loose association between Shannon and the hospital, but there is still that association as a result of their build-out. If it's a good faith effort to bring in the program, I don't envision canceling it, because, at least, I don't want to say after the first year, but I just want to talk to the model and what we've heard tonight, 3 months into the program, because I think there's a period of time where we need educated community, educated riders, where people can come to learn and come to understand what's going to be where, when, and how they might utilize that. I think it will take, I think there's, like with anything that we talk about investing in, some startup period and some learning period that a community would go through. And frankly, an ability to answer questions as questions come up. That's why one of the first things I did in the first meeting becoming chair is recommend a Transportation Advisory Board, so that, number one, the representative, which is typically the chairman of the board of the selectmen, working with the MWRTA, has solid information that's being gleaned from the community. Typical questions, typical issues. If there's an issue with, say, cleanliness of a bus, we can work back with the MWRTA.
Excuse me, Bill, that's fine, and that's all well and good. That's not the objective of this.
Right.
The objective of this group is to look at $250,000 based on X amount of riders. And it's a cost per rider issue for us.
Right. No, well, and let me talk to that. There are 2 points, though. Yes, I understand the mission of this board, and I appreciate what you're saying, and it helps keep a lot of people focused on what the real issues are for this board. But there are other people listening. I just wanted to make sure that they're not hearing from the 3 people that are sitting in front of the FinCom that we're willing to scrap the program in the first 3 months just out of, I just wanted to make sure there was that understanding, and so there's some of that.
But that's the next question. What criteria are you going to use in order to decide if the program is successful or not?
Exactly. It is that group I expect to develop those metrics with as part of that pilot. I think some of them are readily apparent. I think we're talking about things that would be obvious, right? Ridership, the employees that they interact with from the MWRTA, cleanliness, timeliness, all of the things that if you benchmarked any transportation thing, you come up with a group of the first 8 metrics. Those are the ones I expect to be using, and I've benchmarked and looked at some of those. I think there are some that are very easy that you would be looking at. I think it's the ones that the MWRTA are currently using to determine their quality of service as well.
We can give you a breakdown on the ridership. We like to do it monthly rather than weekly, but we can give you a breakdown of the people that get on the bus, not personally the names of people that get on the bus, what stop people get on and what stop people get off. So that's a report we can give to the committee that.
We
On that
expect
issue?
that on a monthly basis anyway. Go ahead, Bob.
Well, I don't know if you want to save questions.
Well, I would like to save it for the end as well, but I don't think we're going to go through.
We
as
move
much.
on, that's the problem.
did before.
If I get on the bus 3 times in one day, am I 1 rider or 3?
Three.
And you pay 3 times?
Right,
Fair.
all right.
So
Right,
let
Howard.
me, so continuing on that vein, as Bill said, certainly have no expectation, no belief, no thought whatsoever that our bus system will not be anything but very successful. The number that we've used is 29,000, 30,000 as the goal, or not goal, as the estimate. That represents 9 riders per hour. I think that that's eminently doable, considering the number of persons who just use the bus even in the morning. Let me just finish.
Where do those numbers come from? I think it's important they understand where the.
That was the question, Bill. There
Okay,
you go.
so I have the
People that
MWRTA
contribute
provided, the equivalent numbers for all the other communities, and certainly I think I've provided it, but I can provide it again. It was in that, my first summary report. That's where those numbers are, and, I don't want to dig them out right there.
Number
also-
5 on the sheet.
Yeah,
It's also sitting down with Veterans
Okay,
Agent.
well, it shows where they come from.
yes. So,
I don't want this to get out of control, please.
So, to answer your question, Phil, so it was in two places. First, in comparison to other MWRTA communities to look to see how Milford fares relative to them. But more importantly, this was a very detailed bottoms-up analysis. I went around and talked with these groups and had them estimate on a daily basis their high number, their low number. So from these groups, myself representing the Disability Commission and the rest of the groups, this is where the bottoms-up number came from. And as I said, I have data from the Milford Housing Authority, Pat provided it, the hospital provided their numbers, SMOC provided their numbers, the Milford Area Humanitarian Council, the schools, and the Veterans Department. They each independently estimated their ridership per day,
Based on,
their experience, their knowledge of the use.
because I have talked to some of those folks, Harold. And for example, Bill Buckley said his estimate was 10 to 15. I said, how did you arrive at 10 to 15 versus 14 to 20? And it really was a guess.
Well, absolutely.
Okay.
I mean, these
Fine,
people, you
as long
take
as
like
we
Pat
understand
Morrow.
it's a guess. Someone's guess.
Swag.
Huh?
Yeah, I want to go through the chair and just clarify that. What we're talking about is department heads that have an understanding of their constituents. This is really a stakeholder analysis to understand who the potential stakeholders might be, who the biggest beneficiaries of the service, who most likely would do it. But we do draw upon, it's not a scientific study in determining public transportation ridership, other than looking at models within the MWRTA and talking with various stakeholder representatives. So it is best estimate that they have, whether we call it guess estimate, it's just terminology, but it is the best that we can provide upfront without bringing in a third-party consultant and studying it for a year. I think if we're looking for statistical significance, that's not what you see in the analysis or the educated guesses of department heads, but you see their best guess based on
Yeah.
their understanding of their constituents.
Right, it's swag. I
Yeah,
agree.
it-
Okay.
Mr. Chair?
They were, I want the gentleman here to finish what they have to say before we jump in with a whole bunch of questions, because we're gonna be here all night at that
I'd
game,
like to
so.
go back to one of the answers to Bob's question.
Can we
Bob
write it
has-
down?
Well,
If you want
here's
it to
my
be-
issue.
If you want it to be interactive, we could do that as well.
Well, we have to spend the amount of time that's appropriate on this, and.
I agree, but, we'll never get to the end of their presentation and discussion that we asked them to do.
Maybe we come back, got a couple of weeks.
All right, if you wanna make it interactive, we can do that, over here.
Fundamentally, Harold, I gotta disagree with you. This is not a 1 month or 2 month, that's not fair.
No.
Just let me finish if I could. And sir, it's nice you're talking about Marlboro and Poopy Land and all this place. That's great. This is Milford. The fundamental question in my mind are we willing to risk a couple $100,000 maximum to see if we provide a solid benefit to the community? What I would like to see is that we mentally know this is a couple $100,000 risk. We agree. Bill, 3 months from now, you got to ride herd on the committee, come back with a beginning report. And as anybody, you start a new product line, you start a new business, the first 90 days, it's going to look bad. If it doesn't, if it looks good, hallelujah. But I would hate to throw the baby out with the bathwater because 90 days doesn't look good. But 90 days, 180 days, 270, at that point, Bill, you got enough data to come back and say, this program works, or let's just pay for Ubers, you know, whatever you said, $6 to go from one end of town to the other and save money. I'm joking, but at the end of the day, you can go through all the data, tell me all about all these other towns. This is Milford. What I'm gonna care
projection.
about is Milford. So are we willing to risk a couple $100,000 because we think it could provide a huge benefit? If we are, then I'm gonna count on the chair of the selectmen and his new committee to come back to us every 90 days with real data. And you know, when you go through all, there's ridership, then there's ridership, then there's ridership, you know, it's very simple. Does it work or not?
Yeah, but I think,
Would you like to see that criteria before we approve $250,000?
Problem,
do that?
Bobby, I have is I don't
Don't know how to do
buy
that.
any of the criteria from Marlboro and
No,
Natick.
their
and-
criteria, the trial criteria. You're in business, you do a trial. You
that's
know what
ridership.
the parameters are up front.
And that-
We, first time tonight, we heard about a transportation commission, which is it? The one you were gonna appoint? Committee?
it's committee.
Committee. You know, this is the first time I've heard that. I'd like to know what that committee's responsibilities are. When is it gonna be formed? What are the responsibilities, and so on and so on. I mean, if we're gonna run a trial, that's fine. But personally, I'd like to see the parameters and the guidelines and the milestones of success spelled out.
You know, Bobby,
Mr. Chairman?
You know, just.
Is that unreasonable?
Probably not unreasonable, Bob, and I think that was one of the questions we asked last time on how the total of 250,000, what was it based on? Okay, it had to have been based on something, so many riders per day, because they're in business to make money. They're not a nonprofit organization. right?
They are.
I thought they
Oh, if you are a nonprofit organization.
they were.
Then I'll get to that question in a minute.
Yeah, that doesn't mean you don't make money.
I want to talk about,
taxes, but.
Mark, if I might, precisely what is in front of you is an article that allows the selectmen with the authority granted from town meeting to enter into those contracts, provide the memorandum of understanding, which is in draft, or being drafted, I should say. We have the basis for that, and we're working with Jerry on that. That you can have before town meeting, in my opinion, that we'll be working with the MWRTA in order to go forward. I envision putting a committee together and quickly, but not prior to town meeting, because there's a different schedule if we were gonna start that committee, if we were talking about bringing it forward a year from now, a different sense of urgency to do that. But I expect that to happen with the authorization.
And with all due respect, I think this committee does not understand, and I'm talking for the committee now, why this is such a priority right now, and why we haven't done more due diligence from our side and all of the things that you just mentioned to evaluate that and maybe evaluate alternative solutions to solve the same problem that may be more cost-effective. And that's why putting this all together now and bringing it to town meeting and implementing it in July may in fact not be the right thing to do.
Yeah,
From-
and it
from
may
my
be,
opinion.
later than July.
No, but we have to vote on it in town meeting, and
Understood.
that's the issue.
Understood. And they're all reasonable questions. I think, I think people may not be clear about the history, and the MWRTA looking to, over the last 7, 8 years, trying to get Milford on board. We've joined. Harold has been participating as a member for a couple of years. This has been a work in progress for a while,
I understand that.
right? So I just wanted to make sure it didn't pop out of the ozone and
No,
people
no, no.
didn't think that,
But what I don't understand is in doing all that information checking and background and all this other kind of stuff, were other alternatives discussed?
Yes.
Or present? Well, we don't have that data.
yes, you do.
We do, but no, there are others beyond that one.
Yeah, but it is what we did.
Well,
with-
I just have one thing that Harold performed with
With Zach.
more than a swag on what he thought running our own bus system would cost. So That's the problem I think a lot of us around here need to understand before we agree to try this.
Yeah, I'm not gonna talk to the spreadsheet. I think Zach's modeling and looking at another provider, what it would take for the town to run it with another provider, I think Zach is better qualified to talk to, because he and Harold worked up that spreadsheet.
I saw the spreadsheet.
Okay, I just wanted to see if there was,
It said it was $350,000.
if there were any questions about how that was done, if there were any questions about, I guess there are some exceptions about whether that versus other models were looked at.
Right.
So, may I?
Yes, please.
I didn't mean to interrupt you. Mark and everybody, I think at the core, it comes down to two numbers. The $250,000, is that the right number? And the estimate of 30,000 riders for the year. And if I hear what you're saying, Mark and everybody, if you could get convinced that $250,000 is an appropriate amount of money to pay to have 30,000 riders, that would be acceptable. Now, let me just finish. If that's not acceptable, if we can't, if after showing you and proving to you and demonstrating to you that it's $250,000 and 30,000 riders, if that's not acceptable to the folks in this room, that's, we're sort of done now. Because that's what the program is, and that's what we've aimed for. And so let's sort of agree that
Excuse me. You're not entirely, it's not $250,000. It's $250,000 for the MWRTA. It's $51,000 worth of transportation costs at the senior center, plus another $35,000 to hire a driver for the second bus that they're going to provide us. So it's 300 and change to start. If we're trying to solve a problem, a perceived problem of public transportation, the objective would be to investigate all the different opportunities to manage or implement public transportation.
okay, and
And I don't think we've done that, in my opinion.
let me just say, Mark, I have extensively reviewed every opportunity for public transportation to provide transportation to those who are not able to get to the places that they want. Now, other programs may address different problems. The problem that I addressed had to do, starting with health, people being able to access health care, people being able to access employment, people being able to access shopping, sheltered sites, battered women's, all the people that don't have access to transportation. That's the problem
That we're trying to solve.
we were trying to solve. And
And I believe you solved that with this one situation.
Now,
okay?
now let me go back even before what I just said then. If that's not the problem this committee thinks we should be solving, if that's it, then again, we have nothing to talk about, because that's what the Board of Selectmen have chosen to review. And again, let me just finish here. A year and a half ago, I presented to the Board of Selectmen, here are the range of problems that we could be looking at, and there are lots. And the Board of Selectmen gave me the direction of public transportation.
And Harold, I'm not saying you didn't do all the right things. You did. And you're very, I've known you for a long
Yeah.
time. You're very thorough. You're very detail-oriented. I'm not questioning any
So
of that.
did
That's-
we study the right problem?
Well, I don't know. I don't know that there's a transportation problem in town, but you seem to think there is, and you've gone ahead significantly and made all of these recommendations based on all of the investigation
So
that you've
let me-
done.
let me
So
just-
there is, in fact, a transportation issue that we need to address in town, it appears.
So, and let me just address that one with you. You were there at the first forum,
Yep.
right? You heard 225 people
Yep.
from different quarters of this town
Yep.
consistently say this
Transportation is important.
this kind of transportation, fixed loop transportation, is the problem we face, we want a solution for. So I don't think that there should be any doubt in anybody's mind that fixed route transportation for persons who cannot get to the places that they want is a overwhelming, absolutely devastating problem in this community. And I have absolutely no doubt to the truth of that statement. I've taken the calls from the hospital where they say, how do we get people to the hospital? And I mean, I just want to say,
Let me, I need to, I don't want to be here till midnight. I know there's some other questions. I'm not saying you didn't do the right thing, not at all. I'm saying that it's, what you've done is significant. And what I believe you've done is pointed out, in fact, that we need some sort of transportation to manage or help the individuals who can, in fact, get in a car and go where they want to go.
Cannot.
And I'm, right, cannot, and I'm not arguing that at all.
Good.
All right, that's not the issue here. The issue here is based on what I said earlier. You're asking this town, the citizens of this town, to spend $250,000 plus, about 3 and change, actually. And I'm not interested in the grant, and I'm not interested in what the state may or may not offer us in the future. Right now, it's $250,000. And we need to understand that that's the right thing to do for that money, because there's a lot of other things that we need to do with $250,000. And we've all heard about this over the last month and change, so.
And Chris, let me just say something. Now, I can't speak to whether this $250,000 is best spent on transportation or some other thing going on in town. That's the Board of Selectmen and this group. All I can speak to is this problem, the best way to solve it is as we've outlined. Okay? And you're looking askance, but really, this has been what I've worked on day and night for a long time.
And like I said, I'm not arguing with what
So-
you've done. You've done a very, very good job, because I know who you are.
So,
Let's leave that and see what the rest of this team needs to say.
Mr. Chairman, may
I mean, Aldo.
I think what we really need to understand is that this will never pay for itself.
That's correct.
It will absolutely never pay for itself.
Right.
And Bob asked a question, seems like about a week ago, and he said, if someone gets on, off, on, off, on, off. I seem to recall when you were in earlier, that if you were heading in the same direction, you didn't need to pay again. So if I were to get on and off the bus 3 times heading in the same direction, I'd only pay 1 time. Okay, so that
One
doesn't
transfer.
necessarily.
one transfer.
Because I don't appear as 3 people, I appear as 1 person at that particular time. Either I'm 3 people with 1 fee.
Sorry, he's talking the route,
He's
the
talking
loop.
Route 6.
That's what he's talking about, not going from here to Holliston.
Right. Okay.
The loop.
Can I just
Every time you
answer
get
one
on and off
thing?
the loop, you gotta pay.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes,
can I
sir.
just answer one thing
Sure.
with that? Because of the way the route presently is set up, you wouldn't be able to do a transfer, because that is going around in a circle, and you only have 90 minutes for that transfer.
With all due respect, that's unimportant, because it's never gonna pay. I mean, you couldn't get enough money.
No, but what I'm saying is that you don't, a person that gets on and then gets on again.
Right.
Is gonna have to pay, because there's no way that it would be more like coming around the whole circle.
I clearly understand that.
Okay.
But, and I'm not arguing with you, but we need to understand that this is going to be an ongoing expense for the community.
Yes.
It might be a very valuable ongoing expense if it works. If it doesn't work, well, that's a sad thing. But we need to understand that this is, if we go year 1, then it becomes year 2, 3, 4, and 5. That's the only thing I'm saying, is so that it's never gonna pay for itself, because you couldn't charge people enough. If you did, then it wouldn't be any sense having it, because the people you're trying to assist wouldn't be able to pay.
Which is,
It's a service we wanna provide for the town.
Exactly.
Just like leaf pickup
That's what
and
has
trash
to be
pickup and everything
decided.
else.
Do you wanna spend the money, or don't you?
and it's not unlike any other subsidy. There isn't a public transportation model in the country that could run and operate, as Aldo said.
Absolutely right.
Without subsidy.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. You know, Harold, I appreciate your enthusiasm and your commitment to this issue. You know, I think as a committee, we're just focused on value. You have a program, it has a cost. Does the benefit exceed the cost? If so, let's go forward. And I think we're all of that mindset. And I apologize for some of my questions because I actually missed the last meeting. But Harold, I'm just skeptical of ridership. I just can't see the mechanics with 29 stops, I think of my mother who lived at Birmingham Court. I mean, I'm trying to visualize how this works. She wants to go to CVS, so she walks down Summer Street to some stop on Main Street, waits for a bus for, I don't know, it could be an hour, gets on the loop, the bus has got to finish the loop to get back to CVS. She goes into CVS, she's shopping, she misses the next go-around, and 5 hours have elapsed. And I just see that, and we want to do good things here, but it's just, it's with 29 stops in a small community, it's just,
Bill, I just want to, your point's well taken, but let me just correct one thing. As I noted on item
It is gonna stop at Birmingham.
number 6, as I noted on number 6 and number 7, unlike what you saw as the map, that was just for show,
Yeah.
Number 6 says that the bus stops are determined by Milford and repeatedly optimized to best match the needs of the riders. Stops will be located. Number 7 is a route timing of 45 minutes. So we're going to pick the stops which matches a 45-minute loop. I've done extensive research, and what should be that timing? 45 minutes is what people came out to be.
Saying the loop will be covered in 45?
The loop will be covered in 45 minutes with the appropriate stops in the appropriate locations.
The loop that we see now? the
No,
one-
no, not the loop,
Not the present loop.
not the present loop. I wish, can I ask something?
And drop
Please
stop
just
signs.
please just forget that map that you saw.
Geez, Harold.
I didn't want, Rick, you did it.
I mean, well,
Okay, let me
I'm over
repeat.
here, we'll get there.
Let me just repeat. That was just an example to show a town and a bus route. Just as a place to show what a bus system looks like.
Something to get started.
Just
Yeah.
a place.
Yeah, sure.
Now, past that, more due diligence. It's going to be a 45-minute timed route, and we're going to pick bus stops appropriate with that. But we have the freedom. It's a Milford choice bus stop, and we can choose to change that at any time, those
Can
bus
I ask the
stops.
question, why didn't you already do that?
Why didn't I already do what?
Create exactly what you're referring to.
The appropriation that we're looking for and the authorization that we're looking for seeks to finalize that in our discussions with the MWRTA.
Oh, well,
That's
why is that?
Why do you need,
Well,
why do you need the funding?
Can
Bill?
I-
You can't theoretically
Let
drive that?
me just say, Bob, let me say it this way. Whatever we were to put down on day one, if I showed you a map today of day one, that might only last a week or two.
I understand
So,
that. Yes, I
again,
understand that.
like that other map, if I show something, people will get stuck to that, and we're gonna optimize it over a period of time. Now, when we get started, there'll be that due diligence to get us to a point where we can have that first draft. But I didn't want to get people stuck like everybody's stuck on the one map already. We'll get there, but let me get back to Phil's one question. Phil, both of us from the healthcare side, we know a lot of people try to get to the hospital and they can't. We know there are employees that would rather take a bus system because they don't want to park up by the Portuguese Club. We know there are tri-county offices where people are missing appointments, right? I mean,
Harold, I'm trying to, I sit on this committee, and I sit on this committee as a member of the community representing the people in the community.
Yeah.
And I really want to keep my hospital
I know, but you have
affiliation out of this
I know, but you have an
discussion.
expertise in understanding the need for transportation. So, again, just getting back to the believability of 30,000 riders. Again, I know you just have to believe that I've done the appropriate due diligence to come up with that number, okay? I mean, At some point, you just have to say, here's the guy, he did the appropriate due diligence. There's no way I can sign up 30,000 riders and show you a list, right? I've done what I consider to be very expert analysis, and I've held that number down, quite frankly.
Harold, again, let me just say it one more time. What you were tasked to do, you've done very well.
Okay.
And the report does show all of that.
Good.
And as we have, and I'm not gonna go into it, but as we have discussed, if you're sitting in front of me and you present something to me that sounds like a wonderful idea, and I think it can help, I'll say, yeah, it's great. I may not be able to supply all the information or the people, because I'm just guessing as well that it's gonna be beneficial to my organization. So, again, the proof is in the detail, and if we get 30,000 riders, we'll all stand up and do this, okay? And continue to pay that $250,000 bucks.
Yes.
Not a problem to us. The problem exists that it's hard to fathom, from this group's point of view, it appears, 30,000 people riding the bus, 90 people a day, no, 127 people a day. That's a lot. Because right now, we already have two buses. One comes in the morning, one goes at night, and I think there's only 10 people on it.
12 each way,
12 people on it.
12 people each way.
Okay.
So it's 24 just on them.
But there's nobody not being put on the bus, is the point. Nobody else standing at that bus stop once the bus is
Yeah, I don't-
full, to say,
Yeah,
oh, wait, it's
Yeah,
like.
I think that they run near capacity, and
All right.
that's, okay.
So that's where we are.
Mr. Chairman.
I'm gonna finish on this side, then I'll come over here. Go ahead,
And
Jeff.
I agree with what Mr. Chairman says, you did a ton of due diligence. I'm just not convinced that this is the best solution for the recommendation that, you know, your recommendation is complement the Milford Senior Center dial-a-ride, fixed route bus service, to get people to the hospital. We don't see any other options that could be financed less money. We talked about adding a second van to the senior center to supplement. Some of the things you actually identify as a recommendation would be covered by the van for less money. And, by the way, to Phil's point, not having to wait the 5-hour loop, be door to door. And we don't see any of that
And Jeff-
information.
And Jeff, again, what you're talking about is solving a different problem. The problem that senior center buses address are for those who are seniors and those who are disabled. It doesn't, that wouldn't cover.
That's included in your count. That is included in what you identify. Rides to the hospital, rides to medical appointments, that's included in your count for ridership.
A smaller number, but the large bulk of that 39,000 are individuals who don't qualify for senior center bus. That's the problem, is there's a huge reservoir of people not only want to get to the hospital, but want to get to a grocery store, or want to get to the senior center, or want to get to the youth center, or want to get to here or there. So, yes, if our only problem was trying to address seniors and disabled, you're right. What you've suggested is the right solution. That was not the problem I was tasked with solving.
Right. Michael.
Harold, I
Michael,
think.
Mike, and Michael. Go ahead.
I think the intraloop is a great idea. I'm concerned about the rush, though. The rush, the urgency to get this funded this town meeting, when I didn't even hear about this prior to January. Yesterday we had the forum at the library, and we had the highway surveyor ask about who's going to clean the bus stops and what budget impact is that going to have. And so I think you're on the right track, and I trust that you'll find the right route. I just don't understand the urgency when there's so many details still to work out. Would you be okay if we passed over it and looked over it? Like, is there any reason why May specifically we need to fund this?
Okay, so Mike, two reasons. The first is, if we are going to start a fixed loop bus system, we should do it in the summertime because of the amazing outreach program that the MWRTA is going to do would happen in July, August, and September. So if we were to pass this in October, we would be trying to do travel training in the wintertime. And that just wouldn't work. I mean, that's just not. But more importantly to me, Mike, I've been around to every community organization, I've sat with every group. And the reason why Chenal is giving this group the money it is, the most amount of money it can possibly give, is because they've recognized through their community health improvement plan that transportation is overwhelmingly the number one problem facing persons dealing with health issues. And if I could bring in a stream of people from different parts of the community just to talk about health, and that has nothing to do with all the other values that would come to. So if we delay, and I'm just going to put it out there, sort of sappy, if we delay, that's less people getting their health, getting to their public health. And that really is not made up. And that's why Chenal is giving us their money to get us to do this. My last, well, that would be it. And Mike, that's why we need to do it now. All right?
Harold, the money is not the issue.
I'm just, no, he asked about the timing.
I asked about, yeah.
No, the timing I understand.
Because I would hate for us to start this and then we miss something and.
No, we're not,
I want this to be successful.
Mike,
I want everything to be lined up so
Mike,
that it is successful.
we've got the years of experience of the MWRTA. We're the last ones to come to the MWRTA. They know how to do this extremely well. And, from travel training to bus ridership maximization, to marketing, to everything. These guys, they've got the solution. They've got the formula. So I don't worry for a moment, and this is just me. I don't worry for a moment that we're going to miss a beat. It's going to be huge.
Well, Mr. Chairman, you made a point, money's not the issue. That's the only thing this committee should actually be concerned with. If we have a recommendation that this town needs a fixed loop bus system, that's not for us to determine. The question is whether or not we believe that spending this money on this, and we can put it in our budget, and it doesn't adversely affect anything else that we're already doing.
What my comment to him, and I agreed with you, and that's what I said at the very beginning, but my comment to Michael was the money, let's assume for argument's sake we're going to allocate the money. It doesn't make a difference until we do it in May or we do it in October. We'll still allocate the same amount of money. The concern was the $75,000 grant. And that's what I meant was, that's not important to the process.
So if we're gonna build this into our operational budget going forward. We have to make sure that we feel that it's not adversely affecting anything else in our budget. And I think all the other discussions and points that have been made by people on the committee have to be taken in context. I mean, I know Mr. Macaulay put out a 5-hour thing. Well, I think we've addressed that. You're only gonna be waiting 45 minutes at any time. So that's not a concern. Sounds like the plan to put the loop in place can go forward. They have to have some tweaking to where the bus stop's gonna be. I'm always concerned about when a service ends, you leave people stranded after 7 o'clock. That's my biggest concern. Or if the bus stops are lit at night, but that's not for us to determine. The question is, are we comfortable with this committee committing and recommending that we now put in the town's operational budget this money going forward in perpetuity to have a bus system in the town of Milford?
I disagree.
I agree with
I
that.
disagree
Whoa, whoa, whoa.
wholeheartedly.
Okay, wait. I agree with what you're saying, Michael, and that's our charter. I just think that this committee has a history of vetting projects deeper than other organizations do.
It's our obligation.
Well, it's our obligation to vet it to the point where we can vote and say, yes,
If it
we'll
was a
spend that
simple
money.
question of will it fit in the budget, all you need is an accountant to do that. You don't need 15,
I mean,
come on.
we evaluate every capital project. We
Yes,
look
I
at
agree.
capital for a reason to
That's
say,
why
do
we're
we,
doing
do
it.
we need it?
Right.
But that was
You
my.
just don't say, we have the
Doesn't
money,
fit,
so
right.
it's automatic.
You've got, that's not what I'm saying. You have people that are proposing something new to the town. So we have to determine if it's something that we can accept based on the recommendation. Now, individually, each of us can say, I don't like that. I don't think town should be doing that.
No.
I think the town should put trolley tracks down the middle of town instead. I mean, that's all different.
We have the obligation to question the assumptions.
Gentlemen, everybody on this side of the table is correct. We vet every project that comes before us. And what we haven't seen is alternatives to this project. I think that's the issue.
That's one, there's many more.
One of the issues. So what we're trying to say is, can we, in good conscience, vote 250K at the May town meeting without hearing all that other stuff? And that's why Michael brought up, can it be moved to October? Because there'd be more time to vet more scenarios, okay? And then we can have a better comfort level in increasing the operating budget by $250,000. Well, more, actually, plus another 35. Sorry.
Can we get to your comment? You keep bringing up and more, and I hear this second bus. What is the second bus?
Well, the second bus was what the MWR is gonna donate to the, that's out of there?
That's not part of this discussion.
No, but it's part of the budget, Harold. That's $35,000 extra that we have to pay.
It's not part of Article 23.
No.
No, it
Out
isn't.
of Article 23.
Mark, no.
It is not part of the budget, this line item. And I'll tell you,
Whoa,
let me
whoa,
use an
whoa,
example.
what do you mean it's not part of
I
this
don't-
line item?
I don't wanna use that as it's not part of the 250K. And the reason why I say that, because I hear and more, there's no obligation of this community to take any additional bus for use by the senior center, as part of this package.
That's fine.
Right?
My assumption was, and what was presented
Well, because it was
more
sold
than
as a
once.
benefit, that's why.
Well, it can be sold as a benefit if the community chooses to use it. My point is, it shouldn't, we ought to be cautious that as we talk about it, penalize the folks who are looking to negotiate to give that, to say, yes, but then now there's additional charge of the driver. We don't have to accept that bus.
Okay, I thought, my
And
understanding.
therefore,
from-
there's no burden for an additional driver.
Fine, but my understanding from the original presentation was that was going to happen.
Facts here.
It can happen, and it's been offered. My point is simply,
Okay.
that's not something that the town has to participate in.
Okay, so,
We can choose not to accept the bus.
So could we get rid of our current bus that we're leasing in favor of this free bus and still operate one bus? If we're leasing a bus, but they're offering us a free bus.
They're agnostic about how that's utilized, other than it's providing benefit to the seniors and the people that it was intended. As long as it's part of our MOU, yes, we can.
The bus that we lease now includes the driver. The bus that they would give us,
It's a
we would
bus.
we would have to pay a town employee to drive it.
Maintenance, everything.
Okay,
all right.
fair enough.
That's not part of this deal then. That's fine. What's the pleasure of the board?
Can you get to the rest of us? Is that at all possible?
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't see anybody over here other than Mike raise his hand.
That's why.
No sign.
Hi, Chris.
Mr. Vice
I'll go after
Chairman,
Chris.
please.
Mark, I'll go after Chris.
Sorry.
Harold, actually, you sold me.
Yeah, pass that down.
I feel that this town needs more transportation. From watching you farm at the senior center, from hearing your reports, all that, I feel, and talking to Sue Clark down at the senior center, we need more transportation in this town. To me, I'm sold. Done. And good job by that, by the way.
Thank you very much.
Where my apprehension starts is the devil's in the details. So I have two or three, I just want to do them quickly. So now we're going to go from an hour and 8-minute loop, thank you, brain fart, to a 45-minute loop. So basically, you're cutting out more than 20% of where we were going to service, and we're not going to service anymore. So to me, that puts a lot of people that were going to get the benefit are going to get the door closed on them. And I understand the reason why, because you can't have an hour and 8 loop. I understand why.
But can I just respond to that? That's partially correct, but not fully correct, because that list of places that we show on that combine, or show individually places which could be combined into one location. And there are multiple of those.
You're consolidating
Let me give
stops.
you an example. We show 3 stops up at Prospect Heights. Easily could be done.
But on the time frame, you had like 1 minute in between.
1 minute, yeah.
So,
So
you
I'm
you
just-
did, but you eliminated
Okay,
2 minutes.
But again, okay, Chris, your
Do
point's
you know what
well-
I'm saying?
No, but your
So
point's
my
well
point
taken.
is, I think we need to service those people.
Yes.
I'm saying that I
Yes.
think that those people that we're giving up on to
Yes.
get a 45-minute route, I don't think we should be giving up on these people.
We're not giving up on it, we're just,
We are giving up on them. By going to 45-minute, we are, because they're no longer going to be serviced by the bus loop.
Okay.
that's less than
Yeah, they're
100%
gonna have to walk
accurate.
further.
Well, so if you're not, so, yeah, well, they have to walk.
And-
I'm not gonna have, because you're telling me that these people that the predominant amount of people are people with health issues, all the other stuff. If you're outside the 3/4 of a mile from the bus stop, you can't get the bus unless you're gonna walk.
and-
You can't call or anything. Is that correct?
And Chris, your point's well taken, and again, I'll just come back to say, I'm confident we'll find an optimal route that stays within our 45 minutes, which does as good a job at.
Because I want that. I like that,
listen,
and that's who I want those people to be serviced.
And I'd love to have a second bus, and then we'd all,
Let
that
me go
would
for a little
solve,
while, because
that would solve the issue, is two buses.
I think we need to be looking at
And-
2 buses.
And Chris, I honestly believe that's what I'm gonna be coming back to next year.
So let me go, because that is, I think, going to have to happen. So now we're talking a significant cost increase on 2 buses.
Yeah.
Mike,
Because
Mike,
I'm of the mindset that if we're going to start this, we can't ever stop it. On a social aspect, I am not going to have people start getting jobs in Framingham, whatever, and all of a sudden, a year from now or 6 months from now, we quit. And what am I gonna say to all the people who said, wow, you created a bus to Framingham, now I can get to my job? They're gonna have to quit their jobs in 6 months? So to me, if we're gonna start this transportation, we need to be committed that we are gonna have public transportation in Milford. And I think it's something we should have. But that's why we need to make sure if we're going to do it, we're gonna do it right. Because I don't think we can start this and then stop it.
Chris,
Once you get that ball rolling down the hill,
Chris, I have every confidence that once this gets started, it's gonna grow past 30,000
Yeah.
very quickly.
so.
To Chris's point about making it work right, this is what we're talking about here on Article 23, to give the selectmen the ability to move forward with this package so that they can move to what they call a pilot program with the intent of moving on to.
I know, but
a
I don't like
viable
this
program.
package, that's my point.
Well,
Or
you-
then I'm getting
no,
to it
you-
in a second, and that's my last
You
point.
have to go through a pilot step. You
No.
cannot just turn it on July 1st at 100%.
I understand.
Yeah.
My issue is the cost. Quickly, doing your math, at 250 days at 13 hours a day, comes to 3,380 hours of usage.
3380, yes,
Okay?
yes.
At 250,000, it's costing us $73.96 an hour.
Approximately, yes.
Okay? So, I do not want to compare these things because they are apples and oranges. Because the senior center van does do pick up and drop off to the house. But my point is, that van, whether we get that van and we make a loop with that van, runs at $31 an hour. So, if we use the bus, we pay $73.96 an hour, and they keep the money. Or we can lease a van and everything is paid for, because she's doing it now at $31 an hour, and we keep the money.
Okay, so may I respond to that?
We could get 3 buses.
I'd like to.
Okay.
I'd like to.
Because
There's,
I understand that they do completely different things, but I can
that's
get that bus. I can get that bus to do a loop.
okay, good.
So I'm not sure that this is, these are things that are going to necessarily work out in a spreadsheet, and just by adding additional buses to the senior center, we can scale to the level of the MWRTA. And so what I have to tell you is this. There's a certain cost to providing it. Yes, it's subsidized. It certainly would be, much like a school system or a youth center or anything else where some people aren't participating, but yet there's a subsidy. But let me say it this way. The MWRTA are experts at delivering bus service to a community. I'm not sure that scaling up, and it is an apples and oranges discussion, because if we simply try to scale up what the senior center is providing to a fixed bus route loop and start to talk about some of the things we'd like to put into runs to the MWRTA or connections into, other connections into places like Genzyme, Bose, whatever, off the other legs of the system that already exist, they're not connecting into a feeder system like the MWRTA is. So you have to agree, or actually you don't have to agree. The point I'm trying to make is MWRTA are experts at what they do. I think the senior center are very good at what they're doing as well. But now taking this and trying to say, we can scale up that system to provide MDA.
I don't want the senior center to do this. But my point is, at $31 an hour,
anybody-
I can call Travelers Transit.
Well, you're
and I bet you I can get a better deal than $31.
You're assuming,
an hour,
no.
too.
You're assuming a a linear scale to this that's going to be the equivalent of the MWRTA. And I'm telling you, it's simply not there. And if you think that it's going to be the level of service provided, I'm going to tell you that it's not.
And tell me what level of service is, because you're driving a bus. So what other service is there besides going on time, being pleasant, and having a clean bus?
So-
What other service are they providing to us?
Chris, so.
That's what I'm curious about.
Let me, in a general sense, and then I'll get to that. One of the requests that I had from, actually it was from Bill, was to look at the cost of Milford providing bus service on our own, being our own contractor. And Zach, you and I.
I saw that, and it's 300, but that's us buying the vehicles, us employing the people. Sue doesn't do that, they pay for everything.
Okay, and whether it's leased or, they came up about the same. Okay, so the 5-year cost was about the same. But let me just finish here. One of the things to understand about the senior center is they run 6 hours a day, and they have their own person.
But that's why I'm bringing it down to dollars per hour, because that eliminates every other one of the variables. Who runs it? It's dollars per hour. And at $31 per hour, and we keep the money, versus $73 per hour, and we give the money away. Once again, and I guarantee you it'd be lower than $31 if we signed up. Once again, Harold, you got me on the bus loop, buddy. I'm in. I want it. It's just a question of how we do it. I think it's a great idea. I'm sold. I just want to do it the right way. And whether another company can do it, and maybe it's not $31, maybe it's $60. It's still saving significant amount of money.
And again.
So I just want it looked at.
And Chris,
That's it.
as well, I had Valley Transport asked to put in a bid to do this. They said they couldn't scale to 13 hours a day, 5 days a week. They couldn't do the 65 hours a day. In fact, I talked to a lot of companies to get a competing bid from the MWRTA. I could find no other vendor to do 65 hours a week. And again, I did a lot of due diligence. I don't want to spend the money either.
Yep.
So there was no other that would be willing to do this for that amount of
Did
time.
you happen to contact Travelers Transit?
Yes, yes.
And they said they have no interest in making $250,000 a year.
And I even went to the.
Chris,
No, I'm asking. They said.
No, it's the nature of the question and aggressiveness. What I'd ask you is, we're trying to answer the questions.
Okay, so and so not only did Travelers, but the bus company that does Vendetti for the school system that Leo Marconi put me in touch with, I asked them if they'd be interested. They said, we can't scale to that kind of level. I called a lot of people.
If that's the case, then that's awesome. If I can just see that,
Sure.
the contact, then once again, Harold, I told you, I'm sold. I want transportation.
Sure.
It's just a question of,
Yes.
to me, this is not, if you have the answers to all those questions that no one else but them is interested, then I guess we don't have a choice.
Well, again, let me just conclude by saying, this is the most cost-effective way to provide public fixed loop bus transportation.
Okay.
And I say that unqualified.
All right, because we've never gotten that information. That's why I'm telling you. So-
I'm still on this.
Okay.
Albert.
I think we can debate this all night long. I do not believe in my heart that you're gonna come back with any better numbers that don't rely, and sir, please don't take this wrong. You're not from Milford. This is about, are we willing to bet money to take care of Milfordians? All the data you're gonna have is gonna be extrapolated. It's gonna be from framing, and I have nothing against the other towns. But in my mind, $250,000, are we willing to try it? If that man right there tells me every 90 days, you're gonna ride herd on the committee and give us back real data and have the intestinal fortitude. And Harold, if it's 8 people a day, 180 days from now, and it's 10 people a day, 270 days from now, then we need an Uber driver
Or
for
I'm
$6
not gonna
a
show
trip.
up at town hall.
See what I'm saying? But if it turns out that it really does show a benefit to the hospital, real data,
Yes,
but Milford data,
Milford data, yes.
then it's an easy decision. So you got me because I don't believe that you're gonna ever come back with real numbers on any other way, and
Right.
whether it's 250 or 200, it's a nutty number.
Right.
We're never gonna make it back. This is not a profit-making venture. This is us taking care of people who can't, it's horrible to say can't take care of themselves,
That's what it is.
but
Chairman?
it's an investment.
And that's what we said. It's a benefit to the town that we do now. We pick up leaves, we don't
Yeah.
charge anybody. We pick up trash, we don't charge anybody. We pave the roads, we don't charge, well, that we pay.
Well, there's not an ROI on a lot of things.
That's right, it's not, okay? And this is one of
It's
those.
government services.
This is one of those that's a freebie to the town, and the taxpayers are gonna cover it. Bill?
Yeah, Harold, again, I'm sure you've done a lot of work with this, and I'm just trying to get comfortable with the ridership. I mean, we have a due diligence responsibility. If we're cutting a check for $250, I think we have a responsibility that, hey, that's gonna be valued. And in that regard, and maybe I'll talk to you privately at some point so I can get more detail, and I'd be happy to do that.
Sure.
But just as an example, can you give me a sense for what, I know Marlboro is probably a community with 40,000 people, so it's bigger than Milford. But I just wanted to get a sense for what the ridership in Marlboro is.
Okay,
as an
just a moment.
example.
Well, Framingham.
I have,
Framingham is much bigger,
We
so,
can give you the whole MWRTA system.
yeah, but
Okay, and
again,
I-
I just want to see what, I'm
okay,
looking
just
for
one more
just comparative
page.
towns,
Community
so.
outreach. Okay, so I have a page in a report. This was one of the very first, this was the first report I did for the selectmen to begin the discussion. So in that very first report, this is now 14, 15 months ago, there's a report which says MWRTA Community Ridership Comparison, and this was 2013 through 2014. So
I'm
Framingham.
gonna put on my glasses for you, but I
So I'll
don't
just
think, I
read
don't think
them.
it's gonna do the trick.
So this you have.
I have?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
So, just some examples. Town of Framingham, 174,000. Natick, 88,000. Marlboro, 45,000. Southborough, 16,000.
Wow.
And then down. Okay, so if we put ourselves lower than Marlboro, which for all effectively is an appropriate place to put, they're at 46,000, I'm indicating 30,000.
I'm surprised with Southborough 16,000, such a rural town.
It is, but it's not got dense population. That's its, and Milford and Marlboro have very dense populations.
Yeah.
And so, I hope that gives you some sense.
Yeah, just one
Some comfort.
continuation comment, if I may, Mr. Chairman. I do agree with Al. I mean, I think we can debate this forever. We're never really gonna know what the ridership is gonna
You
be.
won't.
I am comforted by the fact that we have this cancellation clause and we'll rely on the selectmen and this transportation committee to work with us, and that's gotta be real. And it's kind of like, I guess we have to jump in to kind of see if it's gonna work, but we do have some ability to get out of the deal quickly.
And by the way, for the benefit of the chairman and the rest of the committee, I'm gonna ask that a FinCom member participate in it, so they can also provide periodic updates to this board and help drive the future
Yeah.
decisions and policies that we
That'd
create.
be good.
Yep, Mr. Chairman?
Okay.
I'm back on this side, Mike.
Quick question. This pilot program, is it your intention to build shelters as part of this 90-day trial? How long is the trial? You see, I'm all in favor of this trial,
It's a 1 year.
1 year.
1 year.
I thought I heard 90 days earlier.
No, hold on.
No.
No?
What we're saying is, we have the ability to cancel.
Cancel.
Right.
But for the purposes of this, the appropriation is a 1-year appropriation. So, I plan for success. So it's my hope that this is wildly successful.
Absolutely.
I have to talk to you about
Absolutely.
something different maybe next year. But that said, the idea is, if for some reason, buses were breaking down, things went
for too
sideways.
long.
Yeah, it's just unwieldy, and it's something that we're not able to work out with the MWRTA. Yes, we have that ability, we can stop the service.
We all plan for success. And the planning for success, as you know, is to eliminate, identify roadblocks and eliminate them before you embark upon an undertaking. Would you
Yeah.
agree?
I agree.
And that's my point. I thought I heard earlier that we were looking at 90 days, Harold. I thought you mentioned that.
I'm sorry if I misspoke.
And I don't think it's fair to evaluate a program
Exactly.
If you're gonna build a shelter
To your
and
point.
have people work outside, I mean, that's not a proper trial.
I agree.
So it isn't 250,000, it's probably closer to 300,000, which is, again, I'd like to know those specifics before we appropriate the money. You know, what are the costs of the shelters? What are the elements of success? What are the milestones? What is the route? This is the first time I heard we were gonna compress the route a little bit. So
think
I
that
am
was-
in favor of that, but I'd like to see the specifics, and I'd like, I personally, I'd like to see you pass over this and bring it up in October. I know that may put a little bit of compression on it, but
It has us starting the bus route later and more towards the fall and winter.
understood, but you're gonna run it for a year anyway.
Yeah.
So you're gonna get another, you're gonna
Right,
get,
but
you're
I
gonna
think-
get warm weather in it.
You know,
Yeah.
I think all of this is highly dependent upon the quality of the startup. And that's in part why we're talking with the MWRTA. That's why we're not going to Joe's Transportation, and there are a lot of transportation companies out there, small mom and pop, to 30-person systems. But we've chosen the MWRTA because of their track record and success. We think we've done an adequate stakeholder analysis when we talk to the employers, Rotary, when we talk to the chamber, and get their request to start this process up, when we talk to the largest employer within the community, the hospital, and what is a very growing aspect of our community. We think we've done that. We think we've gotten ourselves to a point where asking for a pilot, asking for startup, and I think I see some of the challenge, and if I had the ability to go back in time and say this, I probably wouldn't have showed you a prototype product. I probably wouldn't have mapped out all of these locations and say, here's what's possible. Because while all of that is good, you may be looking at a product that's different, modified slightly, 45 minutes compressed, and now everybody's stuck on the prototype I put in front of them. I run into this problem at work all the time because there's an evolution, there's design iteration, there's all kinds of things that happen for continuous improvement. I realize your point. If this is something that's a barrier to your vote, I understand, but we'd like to go forward. We're holding the right types of community forums, and we're involved with the right types of stakeholders, and I think we're involved with the right service provider.
Yeah, just one follow-up, if I may. I mean, I think the ability to monitor the progress is key to this, because as a
Agreed.
practical matter, we will not cancel. I mean, you need data. You're gonna need 6 months of data, then you're gonna look at data at the end of 6 months.
Yes.
Unless it's outrageous, you're gonna say, hey, we're gonna run another 3 months. So we're looking at 250, but the ability to monitor, the success or ridership is something we have to do, and that's where we need our due diligence.
Absolutely.
Mr. Chairman,
One more. Go ahead.
I move that we make a favorable motion on Article 23 to give the selectmen the ability to take the next step on this.
Second.
Any more discussion? I just have one. We'll sit down with Zach, and, I mean, he already ran the numbers, and the P and L that we normally look at, that Paul comes up with, is tight now. If we add that 250K to the budget, we end up with a positive number of, I don't know, it was less than 10,000 bucks, if I remember correctly. So that's something we have to definitely look at when we finalize the budget in May, because we're gonna be tight. All things being equal as we are now, okay? So, more of the discussion on the motion, all in favor?
The only thing I would say is, I'd be a little worried at starting in the fall, because I'm not sure you want to build all these cabanas till you know the program's gonna work,
They're not gonna.
That isn't the issue.
We're starting in the summer, and
All right, all in favor?
You're gonna get me there, right?
please.
Count them up. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Wait, all in favor? One,
Take
two,
a second,
three,
Mr.
four,
Chairman, to think about
5.
it.
Chuck, 6. All opposed? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 6 in favor, 5 opposed. You get it.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time.
All right, any new business? We are not gonna
yes,
discuss
yes,
Article
yes,
155. Yes, sir, what?
Yes. I would like everyone around the table to decide if they wish to have their name placed in nomination for the next round of the Finance Committee. Now, we're gonna be looking for a chairman, a vice chairman, and 3 members of the executive committee, because both chair and vice chair are ex officio members. They're by virtue of their office, they are members of that particular committee. So by the end of May,
Well, that was the question I was gonna ask.
by the end of May, please contact me or Joyce and let us know of your desire to have your name placed in nomination.
I was gonna bring up to the committee, do we wanna continue to have the election in June, or we wanna move it to May, before town meeting?
What difference? Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Assuming you're not running for reelection?
I got a
The chairman makes the presentation at town meeting, and since I'm not running for reelection,
Mark, I think it's a bad move to do it in May, because then you've got the ex-chairman. Candidly, let's just make it, this is your year. I think you ought to make the presentation, because you've been at the helm. Whether you want to or not is a different issue. But I think where you've been at the helm the whole year,
Okay.
to take somebody, because it may not be a vice chair next year.
Those in your,
Okay.
those in your committee have a suggestion.
we'll do it in June. Any other new business?
I do have a question, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
We just took a vote that was 6 to 5 in favor.
Correct.
Should we publish with our report the dissenting opinion?
I don't think we have a dissenting opinion, I just think
we
there's,
have an
I think there's a
alternative
number of people that don't agree with what we have.
Well, don't
And
they?
we want to see other issues.
Isn't that a dissenting opinion?
I mean, if you wanna put that down as a dissenting opinion, you certainly can.
You've got a committee vote that close. I think that the town meeting members should take both perspectives into account.
I was gonna say, one thing that I was planning on doing is in the report from the FinCom to town meeting members, to include all these points, because it wasn't a clean, easy, hey, yes, do it. So you may want to, I'll circulate the draft, because it'll have both the pluses and the minuses that we discussed. So once you read that, you may then decide whether or not that's enough, or do we want to have a separate,
Right.
now, if you find that you believe we should add more to it, I'm 100% in favor of that. Just as I send out the draft, like Mike, you've been great at finding things to add in to make it more clear.
I think if that's okay with the committee, that's the way we should do it. If somebody that's opposed to this article wants to stand up on town meeting floor and make a presentation, you just have to give your name to the moderator and tell him that you want to make an alternate presentation, and if he calls, he will call on you.
Right, right.
Okay?
Question,
Sure.
that means we only have $10,000 left.
Well, Paul and I have to work the numbers out. We have to work the numbers out. That's the number I recall, I may not be right.
I would just say right now, all the numbers that have been published are relatively fluid. So we haven't nailed down all the budget, and we haven't got any final numbers from the state
From the
yet.
state.
So there should be, and some of our revenue numbers are actually a little higher than.
Just wanted to be personal.
So we should be,
Pie in the sky.
it should not be a factor.
It is pie in the sky.
All right,
How can I know?
any other old business?
So they're still gonna send me,
Yeah, they're gonna send you
by the
everything
end
they want.
of May, please.
Meetings.
They're gonna send you everything.
Thank you.
Put your,
Any other discussion? Can I have a motion?
Say second.
Second.
Okay, all in favor of? Yes. Good night, gentlemen. See you, May 11th.
May 11th.
Albert.
Same time, same station.
Albert, what I think.